cars, shoes, electronics, and dogs. She claims Mr. Kinoti took these possessions on the 10th of September and he sent officers to guard her house. She also claims that some court documents that the officers took were items belonging to her daughter. She said that the DCI officers interfered with the scene of the crime and said that she basically that they allowed the media and members of the public to access the home, and this led to an interference with the crime scene. So I think they're using this then to enter into a plea that, this then cannot be. And of course, after this, there were certain discoveries that were made, such as the body of her slain husband, and she's saying, look, basically anybody could have done this because of the fact that the scene was opened up, and this cannot be allowed, basically, is what she's saying.
Inadmissible evidence.
Are we actually allowed to discuss this matter?
Well, it's in the
Absolutely,
newspaper.
it's not sub judice. We can discuss it.
Okay.
There might be parties to the case that are not allowed to discuss it, but us as individuals and the media, I'm sure we're allowed to discuss it.
You can discuss the merits of the case.
Or demerits.
It's all good and well to
But
mount a
cannot
defense,
go.
but there are certain positions that open up a Pandora's box. And this, in my opinion, is one of those. Just like if in yesterday's discussions I said that some of the utterances by our Deputy President is opening up Pandora's box.
Yeah.
Because there will be a response, and that response will open up even further Pandora's boxes. And I think if you look at the reports we have in the papers today, Pandora has opened her box.
Yes, Pandora is awake.
Is out.
Yes, fully awake and alive, yes.
Yeah.
And we expect more of this.
Yeah.
Right. Page 3 of the Standard. A Kenyan bags Global Award for Conservation. Now, this is a woman from Nyandarua County who has won an international award for her efforts to conserve the environment. Mary Wanjiko from Wehoti village was awarded the Messengers of Peace Heroes Award in Kuwait by the country's Prime Minister, Sheikh Jabar al-Mubarak. It was the first time that the award, sponsored by the World Organization of Scout Movement, was recognizing environment conservation. Her organization, Mary Wanjiko's, is called Brown Olive, and it's been doing some work in environmental conservation. Now, the interesting bit here is this same lady had received an award last year from the president, and she had received the Chief Scout Award from President Uhuru Kenyatta 1 year ago. So exactly a year later, she receives the global recognition by the Scouts movement. It's another good thing that's coming from Nakuru County, Jerry. No, this is Nyandarua.
Not Nakuru.
Not Nakuru.
Good
It's
things
from
come out of
Nyandarua.
Nakuru County. No doubt.
So we know the teacher, Tabiti. We know, Kenyans are basically just getting global recognition.
Question is, are we celebrating them?
We are not, clearly, because you see, like this one just gets a small bit of a story here, but at least there's some recognition on this particular one. There's a story about it. So it's a good thing.
Interesting. Now, at the front page of The Nation, it says the meat that lands on your table could be from stolen cattle. I don't know if that makes it tastier or not, but they then talk about how growing appetite for meat is fueling the bloody raids on villages and enriching traders. An exorbitant bride price fuels the culture of cattle rustling. So the fact that we enjoy our steak and our beef, or is it our nyama choma, is actually encouraging people to go on these cattle raids, and that's further exacerbated by the fact that bride price is on the rise, and so people have to go cattle rustling. Very interesting.
Quite a story of cattle rustling and how it has been taken over by cartels and business people.
Cattle rustling, I mean, it's, robbery with violence. Why
It
are we
is.
naming it anything else? Or is it a culture?
It's a culture. It's not necessarily a
when
culture.
cartels come in, it's now organized crime.
Cartels
is.
are involved in cattle rustling?
Yes.
Good Lord. Okay.
That's why it's still rampant even now, today. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 6:15. Remember, you can access all of Standard Group's publications via the Standard e-paper app. Download it today from Google Play Store and Apple App Store. And then you just pay one subscription fee. You can choose weekly, monthly, or annual. And you get to access all of Standard Group's publications, including the Study newspaper, all the other publications, Mount Kenya Star, and the pullouts as well. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice
spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
16 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? Welcome to The Situation Room. My name is Eric Latif. We have Jerry Thorne, Nduoko and CT Muga. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. And one of the conversations that we're going to have this morning is with regards to the police service. It's called the service. Remember, for a long time, we were calling it the Kenya Police Force. And then we started reforms of the police, and we now call it the Kenya Police Service. And we even have some management structure in which we now don't have a commissioner of police. We have an inspector general of police and 2 deputies. We have a body that oversights their operations. That's the Police Service Commission. And also we have another civilian body that looks at them oversighting the policing operations. So when you have a complaint against the police, you have a way to go and report this, and then it's investigated. This is the Independent Policing Oversight Authority. Now, with all those things and all the reforms, including attempts at increasing the number of police officers, retraining of police officers, and for them to understand that they are dealing with human beings and their brothers and sisters and their members of their community, we still see incidences of police brutality. Case in point, of course, you know what happened at JKUAT the other day, where we saw students had gone on the rampage. They were basically rioting and demonstrating over certain issues, and police officers were called in from the nearby Juja police station. And we saw a clip of several police officers, 4 of them actually, descending on one student with whips, blows, kicks. They did not shoot him, but they basically beat him up. Now, of course, that elicited a lot of public reaction, hue and cry. The Inspector General of Police said those police officers stand to be interdicted. They were apparently identified through a parade, and now they have been interdicted. Action is going to be taken on them. Of course, it brings up the issue of, do we really have police reforms in this country? Have we made a lot of progress in terms of ensuring that we have police reforms? Do we still have cases of brutality? Police are allowed to carry firearms. Police are allowed to use reasonable force while they are conducting their operations. But there's those who have said that reasonable force by the Kenya police is oftentimes unreasonable. Is that true? Is that not true? I think in very many instances it's unreasonable. And it goes into not just the police individuals themselves, it's the structure still of the police service. We still haven't gotten to a point where the police department is actually thinking of itself as utumishi kwa wote. It thinks of itself as utumishi kwa watu fulani against watu fulani. And this is the conversation I want us to have this morning. Case in point, we know of there's an ongoing court case about police officers who are accused of torturing and murdering a lawyer, his client, and a taxi driver. And this is lawyer Willie Kimani, and this happened in Syokimau a couple of years ago. We also hear of cases where police officers have been accused of, for example, one is accused of a hit-and-run accident, and then they, because of knowing how to play around with the law, they try to evade justice. Of course, it's caught up because there's CCTV footage, there's public goes to complain, and IPOA starts investigations. But we still see a lot of these things happening. The other day, we saw cases of police officers who were caught on camera and were involved in a robbery with violence with guns in a sleigh. And they took away cash from business people. These cases are many and not far in between anymore. They are actually occurring on a weekly basis.
They're probably more widely reported. Yes, they could be on the increase in terms of numbers, but of course they're also more widely reported. Of course, police have powers of arrest, and they're allowed to use reasonable force, which is the amount of necessary force to defend one's property or one's lives from violent attack. But of course, what we're constantly treated to, if I can call it that, is an exhibition of the police using excessive force, which I think is what most people would agree on with the images that were coming out of JQuat the other day. So police brutality, of course, is a violation of the law. But we must also look at the other side of the coin. And I'm not defending those actions in any way, shape or form. But in a riot or in a situation that there's tension and people are throwing stones, you have to understand the police's sort of anxiety is also heightened, and they could react. They're also human beings, so they could react in a way that would be deemed excessive, which is what we saw. And I'm not defending them at all, but if we try and understand the psychology there, so maybe perhaps better police training as opposed to actually blaming the police service. And then when we talk about brutality, we must question whether it's institutionalized brutality, as in the police force as a whole or the police service as a whole actually condones this and encourages this or turns a blind eye to it, or you have individuals, as you talk about, the criminals within the police force, you have individuals that are more likely to practice excessive force and brutality on members of the public.
I think also we need to look at, in a lot of the cases that we've seen, one or two individuals bear the brunt of this kind of violence. If we just want to take an example of what happened with this one gentleman coming out of the JQuat protests, as we saw, these are 4 police officers on one individual. I mean, how many times would you need to knock sense into somebody's head, as it were? And these are people, for me, if you hit me once, I maybe try to get the point of what it is that you were saying or what it is that you were trying to get across. But there was and we don't even know when they stopped, because I think that video stopped, ended at a certain point. We don't know when they stopped, and we don't know what the result was of that. But these were 4 individuals on one person.
Completely unnecessary force.
Completely unnecessary.
No doubt about that.
And even the other things that we have seen previously, it's one individual who's being clobbered in the middle of the street. We saw the famous story that came off of University Way during the IEBC demonstrations, etc., etc. Again, one individual who's being stepped on, pounded on over and over and over again by 2, 3, 4 police officers, one individual.
To serve as a lesson.
To serve as a lesson
I
to
was
other
going
people.
to
It's not
say,
a mob
perhaps,
that they're meting this on.
It
It's
could be
one
that they
individual.
also use it to quell riots, but also as a deterrent, because of course, in terms of numbers, we don't have enough
Police officers.
cops or bobbies on the beat per population.
So it's like
for-
what?
for
Let's
each
beat
individual.
certainty so that let's finish.
Well,
so that
it's
others
become
know.
Go
an
and tell the rest.
Tell the
understanding.
rest.
It's become
What
an
you found here.
understanding that the police are going to behave in this way. So people are scared and so on, because we don't have the numbers to actually control using reasonable force. So there is that argument as well. So in defense of the police, for lack of a better phrase, or for the sake of argument today, I can say let's also look at the psychology of the police and the conditions in terms of that exact situation during a riot, the heightened tensions and anxieties that the police might have, and also the fact that maybe they use these techniques and this brutality as a deterrent.
Yes, but that is what one side of the story. Which do you think is more likely to happen? Do you think people are going to be afraid of the police, or when they next have a situation like this, they themselves will become more violent?
They want to revenge.
Yes. What do you think? What do you think is likely to happen?
In terms of
Because
relations.
you expect that the police are gonna throw something at you, so you throw
Yes.
throw something at them first.
Yes, exactly.
Herbs, stones.
Yes,
Then in
instead
this
of-
case, attack becomes the
yes,
best form of defense.
Yes, instead of just simply marching and shouting and ranting and raving, they now come armed to fight. So it's no longer just a demonstration. It's a fight. Yes.
So you don't think the deterrent aspect holds
It doesn't
any water?
work.
That
It-
wouldn't work,
it
especially
doesn't
because
work.
when you take it on one person, this one person that you've taken basically is the weakest one, because that's the one you
That's
caught.
the one who's caught.
That's
The
the
one
one
you
who was
caught.
The one
caught.
you
But you
caught.
must understand the
For
youth
for
in mass
whatever reason.
hysteria.
Probably this was the innocent one who was just walking by.
Along
Yes.
the way.
Yes.
And you even see it very many
Collateral.
times when somebody is actually walking by and then everybody else is running away. The one who's walking is the one who's caught.
But we have
one
come
that-
a long way in terms of even our relationship with police officers and
How
what to
exactly?
expect. I think just generally, if I can speak for myself, there was an element of fear previously, and you would see police being a lot more interfering of your rights. Today, they respect us a lot more. I think also it's because, with the technology of mobile phones, you can video them, and you've seen that happen, which has put some sort of checks and regulation on the police and their powers of arrest. But the police don't have the same sort of power that they used to in
Avenues
terms
to
of
exercise their power.
No, if you remember before, I mean, you just, people are walking around and they're arrested for loitering. You don't see that happening.
It happens.
as often.
Oh, it happens.
It just happens.
really?
Yes.
Oh, yes, it does.
You just move from that demographic.
Yes, you just don't live in an area where people are picked
I
up.
moved from which demographic?
From that age group, for instance. When you are a student, you are younger, you would you meet with the police officer is likely to stop you and ask you very many questions.
Right.
Now they look at you and they have, some
Although
sort
they
of
assume you're up
respect.
to no good because
Yes.
you're young.
Right, and
Okay.
perhaps the testimony would come from, exactly, if people in that demographic now, if you went to ask them a question, you just look at universities in the city centre, and if you ask them that question, what do you feel, they will say, they would probably give you an answer like, absolutely no way are they our friend, and they're almost ready always to fight us. And so, yes, I think what happens in this case is that, for example, if something were to happen at JKUAT tomorrow, just as an example, and the police were asked to intervene, you would probably find that those who know this gentleman, or even if they didn't know him on a personal level, by
They want
virtue
to
of the
avenge.
fact they would, absolutely, they would not even necessarily want to avenge, but they would be ready to fight. And that's just what happens in this case, because they think about the trauma of just watching what happened to
The
a
way
comrade,
it works
as
in
it were.
institutions, all that is required is for
one of them to be
student,
touched.
Yes,
That's it.
that's a comrade.
That's comrade, exactly.
Yes.
Our comrade went through this, and
That's
so
it.
in another opportunity, when we have another opportunity to fight back, that's what they're going to do. It's not a matter of fear anymore. And I don't think you've even injected an element of deterrence. What you've done is that you've injected an element of even further violence for people to say this cannot happen, and so we're not going to sit and be afraid, but we're also going to fight back, because if we don't use this opportunity to
By
fight
the
back,
way,
we're not going to get another
when
chance.
you're in a grouping like a university, fear isn't the thing
Fear
that
is
comes.
not a factor that
not
is
really.
displayed.
Not really.
No.
Not really.
Of course, there is the Independence Police Complaints Commission, or here IPOA, established under statute to act as an oversight on the police. How effective this is, we're yet to see. Of course, very underfunded, if you ask me, considering the mandate that it's been given as as an institution or as an agency. We haven't seen, what we don't see, or we're not treated to situations where we see cops actually, being either fired, disciplined, going to jail for these violations. And perhaps the public needs to see some of this so that they feel there's been fair play and a sense of justice. So maybe IPOA needs to ramp up their communication somewhat, and we need to follow through with certain cases. We don't hear too much from IPOA. But of course, it's still a balance in that the police still must be respected so that the citizenry can uphold law and order. We need to maintain a good relationship, trust and confidence in the police. So it's a fine balance on the part of the government. We can't paint out the police to be rogue, because otherwise it would be very difficult to enforce law and order. So there's a number of things to consider there.
I think you've raised it there. So there's an issue here of, if IPOA comes out and all the time we're talking, you see, if IPOA is speaking, they are speaking about issues that have been raised by the public regarding the police. And it'll be complaints and the action that they've taken on police officers. So it'll be constantly in our ears and on our eyes that the police complains, and this is the action being taken on police officers. And of course, that could erode our confidence in the police service. However, at the same time, that also bolsters the police officers' impunity. So where they're feeling, nothing's really going to happen. I mean, they can't take so much action against us.
What is our motto as a police? Is it to serve and protect, or am I picking that up from Western
service
media?
to all.
Service to all. Now, the service is to protect lives and
Service has
property.
to be
Yes.
defined.
Lives and property. That is their first and foremost duty. If we were to erode the trust and confidence in the police with consistent reporting of police brutality, which I think the cases are, I'll say, few and far between relative to the actual work that the police do. Not to say that we shouldn't highlight them, but if we were to give these cases column inches and heavy ink consistently and a lot of airtime, what would happen is, if we erode the trust and confidence in the police, it will become very difficult to serve and protect, or to actually carry out or discharge their duties, which is to protect lives and property, which is key and crucial in a country. You do want law and order. So we have to be, it's a delicate balance.
On the other hand, for us to feel that there's reforms in the police service, we need to see the rogue elements being weeded out, on a regular basis. So where the public actually raises an issue with the police service, that action needs needs to be followed through, and we see, okay, so this is the investigation that has been carried forward, that's been conducted. This is the action that has been taken on the police officer. Or, for instance, if there was a misunderstanding with a particular member of the public, that we see there's been some reconciliation being done.
Yeah, what we
this
need.
This is why the police officer acted this way, and they are here. They are here to explain to you what they were doing, and this is the law that they were using, the fact of the law that they were using.
Eric,
we don't see that.
IPOA does a lot of that. The things that IPOA, what they do is actually reported in the media very, very often. It's just that people don't take notice of it. An inmate dies in prison, they investigate. Someone complains about a policeman, they investigate. Policemen are taken to court, they investigate. It's actually in the media very often, more often than people would like to admit. It's there. It's not that it isn't there. What is heavier in our minds is what a carryover of what we believe the police to be and the incidences. Remember,
the negative incidences.
Yes, that is the focus. It reinforces an idea we already have of the police. So even
this is what I was saying, remnants of previous experiences with the police. So
that are still carrying on.
A negative bias, and maybe we're looking to confirm that.
It's 6:30. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads this morning, and then we come back into this conversation.
Traffic.
All right. Gong Road is actually looking very good this morning. There's not much traffic as you're trying to get into the city, or at least move away from it. We're going to have some problems in Parklands today because they've started renovations, 2 years ago, and that has still not been completed yet. So trying to get into Parklands from wherever it is that you're coming from is going to be a bit of an issue because the renovations are going on, but they're still taking a while. Thika Road this morning, not so bad, and traffic is moving. We're going to probably see a build-up around Safari Park and moving further down in a short while, but we'll let you know how it looks like. Nothing major to report at this point, but the traffic is going to build up. If you didn't leave early, then we definitely want to hear what those updates will be like later and how soon you can get where you're going. Keep it here. We'll let you know what's going on in a short while. The number to call is 0719 012 600. Have any information you want to share with us? Please do so.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Is action taken against police officers who go rogue? There is one here, actually. Former police constable Harrison Kipngetich pictured at the Mombasa High Court, where he was found guilty of killing Doreen Wawera, Alice Katonya, and police constable Jacob Nderi 16 years ago. So this is one case. 16 years later, somebody has actually been taken to court and has been jailed. A policeman has been jailed for life for that, killing 3 people. We've seen also yesterday the police service commission took action against 3 police officers who were identified in a parade. They were involved in the scuffle at JKUAT earlier, and they're the ones who were caught on video beating up a student. So investigations have commenced. They have been interdicted. They're going to get half salary. They are not going to be reporting on duty until this investigation is completed. Of course, there's a 4th police officer, and that's where also the questions have been. So there were 4 officers. How come you've only interdicted 3? And the Police Service Commission says we were able to identify 3 in a parade. The 4th one, we still haven't been able to identify them. So investigations are ongoing.
Of course, that comes as an aftermath of the public pressure. That was a lot of Twitter, a lot of information exchanging through social media. So social media has helped, regulate
policing, the police.
Police and brutality. But also, I think on part of the police, they do show us that it's not institutionalized brutality. These are individuals that they look to reprimand. It's not systemic, which is, I think, a move away from what we previously had. This is what I was trying to say. I do feel there's been a change in attitude. The police are willing to react, and there's consequences for those who use unnecessary force or who use this brutality. We see that. Whether that is as a reaction to the fact that the media is placing pressure on them, social social media through individuals, and they simply want to pacify us as members of the public, or whether this is now the ethos of the police to ensure that such practices are not institutionalized and not systemic, and that they weed out the individuals responsible, is up for debate. It's a moot point as to the intentions of reprimanding these individuals.
If you think that what you're seeing in Kenya is vile, in 2018, high school students were demonstrating in France, developed country and all that. Not only were they beaten up, but they used rubber bullets, they used sting gas, they used tear gas. There was an uproar. Amnesty International had to intervene. We have a situation in Hong Kong even now as we speak. Every other day, we read of a situation where there's police brutality in America, in one of their cities, and unfortunately, the people at the end of this particular stick tend to be black people. So the race element comes into it. Now, I'm not saying that on a scale of 1 to 10, our brutality is actually mild compared to the others. I'm saying that I am seeing a trend. What is it about police and the public? I'm raising this question. It's a different question now. Because it appears that even when it's a peaceful demonstration, all they're doing is walking. Somewhere along the line, some excessive force comes into being, and then you have a full-scale battle on your hands.
We have seen... sorry, go on.
No.
We have seen peaceful protests.
Yes.
We've seen peaceful marches.
Even in Kenya.
Absolutely.
They happen, they start from the beginning to the end. They're peaceful, they end, people go back home. But also, at the same time, globally, we also see incidences where police actually do take up some excessive force on demonstrators. But what is it that triggers that? Is it the police that trigger that, or is it the public that basically triggers something that makes the police react, and of course it spirals out of control?
Is there an assumption that whenever you see people coming together over something, that there needs to be some kind of brutality that is meted upon them in order to quell the kind of uprising that we see? Is there something that's kind of unspoken or silently understood that you need to be ready to use some kind of force to quell the crowd, as it were? Because if we look around the world, I mean, just like you're saying, the police force in France, the police force in Hong Kong, the police force in Nigeria, you just assume that when you see crowds forming, that you're going to need to use some kind of force to be able to shut it down. It's something that seems to be silent, but it's something that seems to be very well understood. We had tanks that we had the whole police garrison kind of stepped down in Kibera on the 7th of November. They kind of assumed that there would be something that would happen because people were basically coming together to do something, and we saw them being offloaded there with their weapons and clubs ready to go in case something happened. So it just seems that still, even though things are a little bit more peaceful, there seems to be an understanding that we're going to have to use force at some point to quell a crowd. And
the same thing happened in Kisumu when there were all these demonstrations against IEBC. The water cannons came, the GSU came, and you know what is of interest is, there were conversations. They said, look, we are simply going to demonstrate from this point to the other point, and then we'll go back.
We'll go back.
And that'll be it. And that's precisely what happened. The only time you had a problem was when the police now decided to show a little force. Then violence erupted. Otherwise, people simply just marched.
They marched there, they
marched back, and then went about their business.
But there's also the tendency by the public, when you see all these riot police in riot gear, you have a feeling that there's going to be some scuffle at some point. So you're already prepared for any eventuality. And of course, there's going to be that one bad apple in that crowd that says something that incites the police.
Well,
now,
I mean,
the thing is about maybe the training of the police officers in terms of looking at it and seeing...
The police are very well trained.
Just ignore them.
Very trained.
Or also reacting. One police officer just feeling, come on,
Yes.
why is this guy just being too much? So
Yeah,
one
and
police officer goes against this one person, and then everybody else
But
joins.
the very nature of what a protest is, it's usually not people celebrating sort of government achievements, is it? It's ordinarily, it's people speaking back to power, people who are frustrated. They're using these protests as a voice. So usually even the atmosphere amidst a protest is one of conflict. It's adversarial. It's them against the state. So if we put that into context, so the atmosphere itself, there's
It's
a lot
charged.
of tension. Absolutely. So it takes a very little to ignite any sort of violence, or it takes an utterance that is offensive from one side to another. So already it's adversarial. It's us against the state, and it's not easy to ignite the sort of riots that we see, and then the police brutality that follows to try and quell these riots. And I go back again to police training. I think in terms of quelling riots, there's a lot more that could be done. The need for tear gas, which is actually allowed in riots, but not allowed in warfare, interestingly enough. But to quell riots, tear gas is allowed. The use of tear gas should be banned even in riots if the police were better trained, if they could better control crowds. And I think, of course, also the police can be overwhelmed in terms of by numbers. And this is why sometimes you see them react the way they do with rubber bullets and tear gas and so on.
There was an attempt to sort of like paint a more acceptable image of the police among communities, where they would sort of like have dialogue, where people can mingle with the police and get to understand their
community
roles.
Policing initiative.
And all that. And in a sense, it actually does work if people can view the police as just being part and parcel of the community. You see, this issue of tear gas that you speak of, again, I'm going back to 2017 when these issues arose and tear gas were being thrown. Adaptation. What would happen is the crowd actually adopted and they understood this particular canister falls down, it's very hot, it'll burn you. People would have gloves, and you'd have people in that crowd whose job is to catch that tear gas before it lands down
and throw it
back to the police. So you had scenes of policemen running away
and people
from the very
water.
tear gas. Exactly. So all I'm saying is
People adapt.
quickly.
And you were talking about people adapting. I met somebody a few months ago, and her business is to run a farm. And so I asked her, I said, what do you grow? And she says to me, chili. I said, all right. So chili for what specifically? He said it's a specific kind of chili because she will sell it to the police force. I said, okay, so now you're starting. She said, yes. And I'm actually now starting to plant because I will get a lot of money because 2022 is coming. And she will be ready to supply. She will be ready to supply. It goes into tear gas.
Oh, really?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah. So you can imagine people
Is that
are
the
even
chemical in tear gas.
It's one of the
It's
one of the components, one of the
yes.
ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
So she's actually ready because you can imagine it's already been set and it's already been kind of accepted that this is what is actually going to happen. It's necessary. And you need it in large numbers, and they're going to have to produce. And so for her target was 2022. So it's already an accepted norm that there will be force, there will be brutality. It will be used. Oh, there you go. It will be used. So I mean, there it is. Just like what people adapt, and so you have people even adapting because they know that this force is going to be used. They're even saying, "How are we going to use? How will I use it to benefit personally?"
Look, even the water cannons that were driven there. These are stories I was told. They understood this water cannon has wheels. So for it to get to us, it must use a road. So simply dig a trench.
So it won't pass.
Interesting
Yes.
initiative you talked about in terms of relations with the police. CT, you suggested perhaps a cordial relationship where they mingle with the community so as to ease tensions and to give a better reputation of the police. Do you think this would not water down? Do you think this might have the unintended consequence of watering down their sense of authority, which then in turn, the idea of respecting an element of fear of the police, a healthy fear of the police, I think is needed in order for law enforcement. So I think if they were mingling and we're sitting down and chilling with the police, having drinks or nyamachoma or what have you, I think you could erode some of their powers, which they need, even if perceived, not real. They do need an element of authority over the citizenry.
Let me give a simplified example. In a school, you have head teachers and you have teachers. And the relationship between teachers and students is clear. But so are you saying that a head teacher would erode his powers as a head teacher if he was friendly to his students, if he was approachable and he ensured that he had an open door policy that people could talk to him?
His students are not criminals. Remember, police ordinarily would be
are
dealing with
the
criminals.
entire
Community is not criminal as well.
Exactly.
I think the whole
We would
concept,
have criminals in the community.
the whole concept of the community policing initiative was just to make sure that also you use the community as informers as well. You see, there are very many instances where the police feel that the community is shielding the criminals within them. And that there are people who within the community may be willing to come out and speak but they cannot speak because they fear the police. So just remove that.
They fear the police, or
Yes.
they fear the repercussions
They
from the community?
They fear the police, one, and they also fear the repercussions from the community. So just ease that conversation and the tension, so that you can have easier access, and also so you can also understand what utumishi kwa wote means. It's not for you to fear me; it's for you to understand that I'm here to serve you, and how you can access that service.
And I don't dispute that, and it's an interesting initiative, but it doesn't come without its pitfalls. And it's important, at least psychologically, as a society, that we do look up to the police, that we respect them. It makes it much easier for them to enforce the law.
The initiative came up because what you're saying had been understood, but the element of fear overwhelmed any sensibility. So how do you mitigate against this?
And that's something that was deeply entrenched. And even when we talk about reforms in the police, I think there also needs to be a reformation then of how people view the police, because the reform shouldn't just be as the force or the service trying to make sure that they get their acts together and actually, at least have the perceptions reviewed. The perceptions that people have of them also need to be reviewed, and that's, for me, should go into a reform as well, because the fear and almost hatred that people have for the police service is actually a tale to be told, and it's going to take a long time to undo what years of mistrust, distrust, brutality, force, violence has actually created. It's going to take a long time to undo that amongst the people. It's difficult to imagine that people will get comfortable to the point where they would be able to go and ask for information or at least have a conversation. It's going to take a while to do that because of what years of the otherwise or of the contrary has created.
We're discussing police reforms in the Kenya Police Service. Of course, seeing the kind of action that was taken by 4 police officers in Juja, which of course elicited a lot of public reaction. And what does this mean to the journey of police service and police reforms? Good morning, 8:13 to 7 o'clock.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. You have Eric Latif, Jerry Thorne, Nduoko, and CT Muga. The phone lines are now open, 0719-012-600. The conversation is also happening on our Facebook page, Spice FM KE, and via the Twitter hashtag, The Situation Room. We're discussing police reforms. Is police brutality still a reality in this country? Is it ever going to end? Is the use of reasonable police force, has it become unreasonable in many instances with the Kenya police? Of course, we've seen what has been taken, action that has been taken by the National Police Service Commission of interdicting 3 police officers who were involved in the JKUAT riot, who beat up a police officer. But also we saw the chairman of the student. We saw the NPSC chairman, Eliud Kinodia, saying, look, this is also bringing up an issue of what is happening with the police service. Is the public safe when interacting with the police officers? Also, the question emerges, are the police officers safe when they're interacting with the police service? This is a question that keeps emerging as well. And he was raising that yesterday. Are the members of the public safe when they're dealing with this? This is a question that came up yesterday, right?
Right. Well, I mean, like I said, I think it's going to take some time for people to get to that point where they're comfortable. If we're saying, can we see a situation like that being created, or people to feel comfortable enough to be able to be in a situation whereby they don't have a problem, hearing and getting information from the police service. But I think it will definitely take a while. And is the intention clear? Because we can talk about saying that we need to get to a point where people are comfortable interacting with the police service. But is that a clear intention that is even coming from them in any way, shape or form? Do we see that coming from them? You have to offer a hand for it to be taken.
Yeah.
You're not just going to say, oh, yeah, well, we want a situation whereby we will be able to sit and be able to communicate, interact with the police. But is that hand being offered? Do they even see it as something that they need to do? Is that opportunity even clear coming from them? I don't even see that being the case. Like I said, I think it's something still silent and unspoken. Those 4 gentlemen, for example, or those 4 police officers, as it were, and what they were doing at that point, were they trying to teach a lesson? Were they trying to say that we are still in position of, we are still the ones in the position of authority, we're in charge, we're in a position of command? Or was it really, we're actually trying to make you see that this is not the way to go in terms of uprising and protest?
I don't think this was a one-off. It was not just a one-off reaction. It's something that they're used to doing.
That's what I'm saying. It's something that seems to be in them. Yes.
If you went to Juja police station, maybe what they do on a daily basis, maybe this is what they do on a regular basis. So when they found an opportunity to beat up one student, in fact, they called one another. They were like, "Come."
I was
There's
going
another
to
one
say.
here.
I was going to say perhaps this is also reflective of what sort of society we are as Kenyans, because the police are Kenyans first and foremost. They do come, they grow up, they're socialized as Kenyans, and we've got that gotcha attitude. You know, I got you and I caught you. You know, as opposed to I'm protecting you. You see, police, I've had incidents where maybe I didn't know I was taking a wrong turn, and as opposed to the police, you know, sort of guiding you, they stand and they try and catch you out. So with that attitude, you can see why there would be some tensions. But it's important to discuss, is this a Kenyan attitude? Is it part and parcel of society and who we are, whereby as opposed to sort of being kind, you want to be right and catch people doing the wrong thing? And as a result of this attitude, and because we also understand it as society, because we're Kenyans and maybe we have this attitude, there's an automatic, or the default position with the police is one that is adversarial. So maybe the police are reflective of who we are as Kenyans in terms of our psychology.
So is that maybe that's also why there was such glee reaction on social media when you've seen the police officers say, we got them. So these are the 4 police officers. We need to see blood flowing because these police officers have been caught. The same question emerges: why is there no? We saw there are 4 police officers. Where is the 4th one? Is he being protected? Maybe it's actually true. It could be a reflection of how we
look at the action. This wasn't subduing a suspect.
No, it wasn't.
Just everything that was done. That gentleman who was kicked on the head twice, he was stamped. The guy stomped, not stamped, on the head. He was kicked in the belly.
What are those things they hold? The
batons.
the batons?
The truncheon, yes.
How many times did
He
he
was
use
clobbered.
that on his
Now,
ribs?
how many times do you need to clobber someone
For them to get the
be
point,
subdued?
I mean.
Because this guy's already on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay? And why do you have to kick him in the head?
Knowing full well.
Yes, and not once. And then you stomp him on the head. Now, whenever people react this way, clearly this is someone to whom you intend harm. It's the issue of subduing went out of the window a long time ago.
Yeah.
But usually when you have a group of people, this herd mentality that you see, it's not born out of trying to subdue, it's born out of fear.
So are the police unable to control their emotions? Do you think they were angry here, or do you think they were,
It's impunity.
wanted to
Lord
power?
It isn't one thing. It's what you're saying. It's impunity. It is why are these people are bothering us? Why are they giving us this sort of problems?
So much
Do they
work.
think they
Yes,
are?
these fellows are all these university students
Always
are a
giving
menace.
us
They're
drama.
always
All the
giving us a
time.
problem.
Yet
And
they've been university students themselves.
many
at
of
some
them
point.
have been, but then they are in a position of power.
So
and
is it
that's what
exercising
power
that
does.
authority?
What I think power does at some point is that it corrupts character. Unfortunately, at some point it does. Once you then allow the position to eat at what it makes you then devoid of morals, and I mean all kinds of things creep in. So now you have a position where you are able to wield some kind of power at whatever degree, however small, however large, it'll corrupt at some point. Because like CT is saying, what they wanted to do to that young man was not subdue him. I mean, he was already on the ground. He was already down. But they wanted to keep him down almost to a point of permanency. And what would have happened if he died? They'd have gone on to the next guy. And that is the perception that most people have. All right, he died because we were trying to subdue him and then he was resisting.
No,
End of story.
Are they fearful? Are the police
they'll report
fearful?
it. Yes, they are. They'll report it as the person who committed suicide in the cells.
Yeah.
That's the story that
So
would come
could
out.
the police be reacting because they're scared? I remember the case in the US, I Can't Breathe, where they held a man down and interfered with his breathing.
He was a big fellow.
Absolutely.
He was a very, very huge fellow.
So there was 4 or 3
Yes,
policemen
but they were
on him.
afraid. It was
They were
clear.
afraid.
But listen, he was black. He was huge.
So he was talking.
Yes. Now think of the narrative around blacks,
Media
criminal.
depiction.
Yes, exactly. So they came in that situation with a predetermined mindset.
Already.
So
Yes.
the bias is there.
The bias was
and the
already
fear
there.
kicks
The
in.
fear
And this
kicks
is what
in.
I'm asking with regards to police emotions and perhaps training. If we look at that clip we saw yesterday, you could see anger and a vengeful aspect to the police. Like,
Yes.
there you go, as Kenyans would say, have it, you know, having
But
frustrated
if they were
me.
thinking clearly, if they were because you and I, having been on the outside, if they were thinking clearly, looking at this individual, there is nothing he would have been able to do.
No,
to
they had
be able
arraigned
to
him. They had managed to stop him.
Yeah,
So
to
he
retaliate.
wasn't,
There's
he wasn't
nothing
destroying
he would have
property.
done.
or
They were
Exactly.
going
a threat
beyond
to
that.
life.
They were going beyond
Now,
that.
why?
Exactly.
This is what I'm asking, the psychological perspective. And do police need more training from a psychological perspective, in that, were they angry? Were they afraid? Were they
All that.
retaliating?
All that.
And
All
this
that.
is where the training
All that.
comes in. Because
I think the training covers all that, but
Clearly
if,
not
if
well enough.
if impunity is allowed to reign, remember something that you keep saying
impunity
here.
being the fact that there'll be no repercussions.
Yes.
But why do they want to do it in the first instance?
Because of
repercussions
power.
or not?
Because of power. Now
So
you
it's a
finally have
power.
an
It's a power game.
trip.
It's a power thingy. You know, you're at this point and you're feeling, I have got authority. I have something, everything
Well,
above you.
that too
and
is a
over you.
psychological issue. So maybe
Yes.
they need training on that, because you don't get that in
On
the
how to
military,
manage
for
their-
instance.
But it's interesting because then it is the system. Then it is the system.
Did you hear this
because
case of
they've come in,
Likoni the other day?
they've come into a system whereby, for example, university students around Nairobi then, or around the city, are known to be a certain way. So you come into the system with that assumption already having been ingrained. So
You've
you
grown
know
up
that,
seeing it.
yeah, you've grown up seeing it. You know that's what the narrative is. So then what happens is you step into a position when you have power, and you marry now that position with that belief that certain people are going to behave in a certain way. And the answer to it is the kind of violence that we see. So
Actually,
it's systemic.
Think about it. Our political class are protected by policemen, right? Bodyguards, personal bodyguards,
Yes.
people who guard you, or whatever it is, all right? Now, whenever all these crimes, financial crimes, are committed by people in a position of authority, one of the things that we sometimes forget is that it's often in the presence of these very same people. They are plainclothes, but they are police officers, all right? So if you're talking about people who see impunity firsthand at close range,
They see it.
they see it.
They
They
do.
see their leaders perpetrating it. People who are their bosses within they see it.
But what is
But even at the bottom level, you know, actually, for instance, someone is asking, if you went to report that the police have actually clobbered me senseless, who would we be going to report to?
Another
IPOA.
police officer.
Same police officer?
No, but this is why you have IPOA, the
then-
Independent Oversight Commission.
Yes.
Independent
Yes, which does not have
police
offices, right?
complaints.
How
Oh,
do-
it doesn't have offices. So maybe we need to
That's
strengthen
the thing.
IPOA. That's
So
one.
the immediate thing that you need to do is you go to report to a police station, so you can obtain the P3 and all those things. You know, people know go to a police station, obtain a P3. So you're going to Juja police
And then you
station
get an OB
and saying,
number.
and get an OB number.
Yes.
Juja police station. You know, an officer from Juja police station has clobbered me senseless,
And I go to Juja police station.
and you go to Juja police station. This is the thing.
How far do you think that case is going to go?
At the
Someone
door.
is actually asking this on Facebook. One of the comments on Facebook is saying, remember the case, the story that was on the Standard the other day, who is going to investigate this police officer? And it's with reference to the top police officer, the Deputy IG, Edwin Bogwa. There was a story about
Yes.
that he needs to be investigated, and the Internal Affairs Unit is the one that needs to come and investigate him. And
How far did that story
The question, we still don't know how
Maybe
far the
we need to
investigation is on.
empower
Right?
IPOA with investigatory powers and financial powers, not prosecutory, but we need to definitely increase IPOA and also
Ensure
communicate
its
IPOA.
independence. It's independent policing oversight of the independent thing.
They're independent of the police, no? I would
But
like
they're not.
to think.
But they're not police, are they?
They're
No,
not.
no,
It's
no,
actually
no, no, no. It's
civilian.
an oversight
So, you see
commission.
they still have to use police officers to conduct the investigations and all. So maybe
This is
it's-
what I'm saying in terms of give them the financial muscle to conduct investigations themselves and the wherewithal to conduct these investigations. I think that's important. And of course, communicate to people. A lot of people don't know that there's an independent Police Complaints Commission that is an oversight authority. A lot of people don't know this. You say they don't have offices. That's very interesting. How do you get in touch with them, on Twitter or?
Well, they have offices, of course, but do they have as widespread number of offices as we have police stations, right? Like how far around the country are they?
You don't need as many as we have police stations, Eric. I think that's pushing.
If you're complaining about police officers,
no, but we've
said at every point where you are able to meet the policeman.
No, these
for example,
cases, I don't want to say are few and far between. I'll say they're more widely reported, so they can appear to be on the increase. But of course, the police force in general does keep peace and order. It does uphold the law. It does protect lives and properties.
Indeed. 0719-012-600 and also Facebook Spice FM KE. Good morning. It's 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, Thika Road, where we always seem to have a gridlock, as it were, is not looking good this morning. Traffic is just like Jogo Road, where we have bumper to bumper all around, trying to get to the major roundabouts that will take us where we are going today. Unfortunately, it's traffic all the way from the Safari Park Hotel today, a little bit closer today, but still the same. All right, coming off Mombasa Road, traffic not so bad, is actually moving, and the boys in blue are getting a good job of things done this morning. All right, looking past that and coming off to Ngong Road, let's see what's going on there. It's not so bad, it's also moving, as well as Westlands. The roundabout has now been closed once again. Let's see what happens in a few days if they decide to take that off or not. Remember that we do have road construction going on in different pockets of the city. It's going to affect traffic in one way or another, so if you're stuck, we know the conference is over from today, so getting into the city centre should not be so much of a headache. We'll let you know how things unfold in a short while.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
So, no doubt, we've all seen images that are making the rounds of the police brutality that was meted on JQuat students as they protested. Of course, a reasonable police force is allowed. That's a force that is necessary to defend one's personal property from violent attack. But constantly we see the police in Kenya use excessive force, and of course police brutality is a violation of the law. So today, of course, we're looking at the reasons for this. Do they do this as a deterrent? Are they themselves nervous and overwhelmed by crowds? Is it reflective of our society and who we are in terms of that got you attitude, always trying to catch people out? Is there an adversarial relationship between the people and the state, and the police are representative of the state? There's a phone call coming in.
0719-012-600 from Kiambu. Evans, good morning.
Good morning, Situation Room.
Good morning.
Yeah, now thanks a lot for you people for the conversation.
Yes.
However, what I would wish to say is that it is very unfortunate at this age of Kenya, where we are still witnessing such a ugly behavior from our so-called the police service. You realize there have been a lot of resources that have been invested in terms of trying to reform the police force. But now and again, all has remained the same. You remember immediately after the post-election violence in 2007, 2008, actually it was where people begin to feel that the police were not actually doing what was needed of them in terms of how to handle cases of confrontation with members of the public. Now, you realize that our reforms has not been in changing the way the police have to execute their services, but it has gone along to be something just to be on paper. You realize there's a lot of PR, PR in terms of how the police is being reformed and all that. But in the end of it all, you realize nothing has changed in terms of how they execute their services, particularly when they're trying to handle confrontations with the public. Recently, there's been demonstration like in Hong Kong for the past 3 or 4 months, and actually you realize maybe the worst it has gone, maybe 2 or 3 people have been wounded or something like such has happened. But why is that such a cases like in Kenya, then you could be talking of thousands being shot, tens of thousands being shot live and all that. And so what we need to do is that the authorities let them stop doing a lot of PR and all that. And then something else, the IPOA. Why is it that they wait until something funny has happened is when they'll try to jump in and say, this is what we're trying to do. Actually, the purpose of IPOA was actually to oversight how the police behave, and in particular how they relate with the public. And could there be complaints, they could be handled in a more in a more better way that are best to the police and as well as the public. In Kenya, you realize the public has formed a very bad opinion about the police.
Yes, Evans,
imagine you are in a car and you are traveling, you are even in traffic. The moment even a driver notices that there's a spot the police, he is already in fear that this is even more confusion that what could be even maybe something like if you see the police within the traffic, then you expect that they will ease and even make things even move faster. But once you spot them, then it's like they will even cause more of problems than even you wish even they couldn't have been there.
Evans,
So,
Evans, you're raising very good points, Evans, and I think we also want to engage you on this.
Yes.
So you say this is a mindset and it hasn't shifted. Is this what you're suggesting?
Yeah,
It's a way of doing things. It's a psychological approach.
Executing their roles. Exactly, that's what we need to look at when we talk about reforms. How should they, if for example it is that is like confronting or going to pacify a situation, how should they go in and do it? Where do you begin?
And they've been trained. They've been trained, but would you agree that this is a mindset? This is to do with us being Kenyans and how we do things, that we're confrontational or we're power hungry or that we like to catch people out. Do you think it's a mindset that it actually echoes who we are as Kenyans?
But Kenyans are not very much different from people all over this world, actually. Whatever we do is not very much different from what is happening all over. Like you are seeing what is happening in Chile, in Bolivia, what has been even in Lebanon the other day. I can remember recently there's the president of the United States was in Chicago to attend a baseball, a game, and then all that. It was being shouted. And then the police, the way they came in, actually it wasn't actually to brutalize people. In fact, when the president even went on to criticize the police on what they didn't really do in terms of trying to quell that, even the police themselves had even to go before the public and even tell off the president of what they were doing was very much right. And there's like so I think what we are trying to do here is police have been left to do things, as somebody has mentioned, with a lot of impunity. There's nothing that guides them on what they ought to do. That's why I'm saying reforms have been left to be just something on paper.
It's just paper.
Not anything to do with executing the roles of what a police officer ought to do.
So do you think individual Kenyans, or do you think this is institutionalized? It's how the system is, or do you think these are members of the public just playing out who they are? Because police are Kenyans, and if you say Kenyans are similar, there's nothing sort of very different from us and the rest of the world. These are Kenyans. Policemen are Kenyan people. They've been socialized as Kenyans. We have similar value systems. We're all one. Why are they behaving like this?
Partly I can say actually our institutions, the way they are being run, I think again there's a problem, because if the police were even like the scenario at JQuat, I think those police who went on the ground to pacify the situation, they were in command of, could be an OCS who was around, and is the one who orders, try to do this, do that, and all that. In fact, it is even is required that a police cannot just go and even fire canister into a tear gas canister into the crowd until he receives a command from whoever is the order of whoever is trying to to lead the operation. So I think the institutions and actually the people charged with those institutions, I think that's where the mess begins.
Thank you very much, Evans.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. He says it's institutionalized, and I tend to agree with him. We're talking about police reforms and all this. So, for instance, and I think he's raised a valid point, who was the commander in charge of this operation? And what action is actually going to be taken on him? Because this happened under his watch. What exactly should happen to the person who was commanding this operation? Because we're talking about the 3 police officers who, yes, took the action, but
they didn't do it out of their own accord or initiative.
This is why I'm saying, if it's not something that is kind of understood across the board, that this is what you should do in situations like this, and then, but unfortunately, what we have then is people taking it to an end which was absolutely unnecessary. So it seems to me it's like something that's kind of agreed. This is the kind of force that we're going to use because this is what we expect to happen from certain people. It would be interesting if the same individual was in another profession. Would they then display kind of tendencies? Would they just be brazen and harsh in the way in which they operated? Because then you could see that such tendencies would then point to something else. It is because they're within this police force or police service where they're expected to behave in a certain way that they do behave that way. If they were somewhere else, I don't think they would. Because why then do we not have other individuals behaving in such a manner with such violence and with such brutality?
Well,
because they've been entered into a system that accepts and expects that kind of behavior. So you do it and then you take it even further or try to push it as far as you possibly can.
You know, this was a demonstration, all right?
CT, may I bring in somebody else on the line?
Yes.
Paul, good morning.
Yeah, morning to you.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room. You tell me you're driving, you're somewhere approaching Nyeri, or is it out of Nyeri?
Yes, I have actually stopped.
Yes.
Oh, really?
I like your station because it's very clear.
Asante sana.
Yeah, and all along the road I did lose any reception.
Very good.
But yeah, I think I take a different opinion in this matter.
Yes.
Because I also think you should consider the police. They are not dealing with people who are peaceful. And if that mob happens to be acting on you, you don't expect the police to come and plead with these hooligans, so to say, and actually ask them, oh, stop doing this, stop doing that. I think the police have, to some extent, have to use some reasonable force.
Reasonable force.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And probably if it gets out of hand, we can condemn them, but on the other hand, we can also try to understand them. Because they're also human. They have received a command, go and quell these riots, and the rioters are also not peaceful.
What if this boy had died? What if this boy had died as a result of the injuries that were meted upon him? What if he had died?
Yeah, that would have been wrong, actually.
And they could have gotten him to that point very quickly with the kind of action that we saw that was being taken.
We actually don't know whether he's going to die or not.
We don't even know if he's going to die or not with the injuries that he had received.
Yeah.
Do you see what we are saying? We are saying that even if something has been provided for, what we are seeing is that it is being taken to a point that is not necessary.
Unreasonable force.
And it's unreasonable.
Yes.
It's not necessary.
That's true.
And it
Yeah,
is
we
not a
can condemn
crowd.
the pol-
And it was not a crowd. It was one person. And you know the thing is with condemning and condemnation, it's just that. We condemn it and then what?
Although I think he does have a point. The caller, sorry, I forget his name. The
Paul,
gentleman,
Paul.
Paul. I think Paul does have a point, because if the crowd did overpower the police, remember this situation is not cordial. It's not a romantic dinner setup between the police and the students. This is a crowd that is angry, that is demonstrating. Yes, perhaps peacefully, but it's very volatile as well. And if the police don't show their might, what you could find is the crowd getting carried away, mass hysteria, and actually overpowering, given the sentiments that they already have towards the police.
We've had many
overpowering
such
the police.
situations in Kenya. How many times instances do we have where the public has turned on the police?
But because the
No,
police...
how many times have we had the public turning on the police?
Few
and how many?
times, and it could be because the police uses or is known to use excessive force. So this could be one of the reasons of the brutality that
No. I'm actually saying no, not at all. How many times have we seen the public provoking the police and fighting them when all the police were doing was simply standing by quietly? How many times have we seen this?
How often do we see that? Right?
we see it when Boniface Mwangi is involved in anything.
Look,
come
see
on.
that.
in 2007,
I have Ruben in Kisumu. Ruben,
bring Ruben.
good morning, Ruben.
Yes.
How are you?
Good morning to you. I'm fine, thank you.
Good morning.
Yes, I want to contribute about what I've just heard you guys talking about.
Yes.
And I want to say that there is nothing like some minimal force or excessive force. When something is wrong, something is wrong. And let us accept as Kenyans. We should check this thing just from how the police are being, how they are being taken to the force from the ground. You remember this somebody who was in nursery, from class 1 to class 8, from 1 to form 4, and this somebody who didn't perform.
Ruben, we're losing you.
Yes. Hello?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, I'm sorry to say this. And when this person gets into the force, he gets to the force with that mentality that he was rogue or he was somebody who was so stubborn. Because you are tall. Yeah, we want somebody who's tall, somebody who's got a deep finance and also such
And can
grades.
run a lap.
So, yeah, and can run. So how do you want to control somebody who is got A plane, A minus and B plus and all that? Number one, they are living in denial because this somebody who performed and this somebody who is disturbing us and this somebody who is such and such a kind of a person.
Sorry, I
So
haven't
we have
understood.
to act.
You're
Yes,
saying the
we have-
police are were A plus students or they weren't?
I'm saying that the police, from how they are being taken into the force, and if you look at the grade at which they attend themselves,
Right.
yes, it has got some question marks.
Right.
That's how they cannot. That's why they cannot handle. They cannot handle the elites out here.
So we should expect the kind of violence and brutality that we see because
Yes,
of the
we-
conditions into which they entered the force in the first place?
No. What he's saying
Yes.
is
That's
that-
what he's saying.
No,
Yes.
he's saying these are poorly.
Yeah.
They had poor grades in the first instance.
That's why they were recruited
Yes.
into the force. You couldn't have gotten
Yes.
somebody with good grades in a better position to be recruited into the force, and because of that, that is why they behave the way they do because they
Because
were
they had
seen
poor
because they
grades.
were seen as rogue, and now they're going to behave rogue.
and
Am I
then
wrong?
they're angry at the
Ruben?
students who have good grades, or
Yes,
there's a
That-
they don't know how
that
to.
is a fact.
Yeah.
All right,
So
so
they're
there's
looking at their
tensions
colleagues
because these
who
people
went
are
on to
intellectually
university.
superior.
Yes, that is a fact. And even if you leave alone that, you've been hearing most cases like maybe they were being taken in such a situation and then people were paying money and then they were being taken. Somebody is not taken because he's supposed to be taken, but somebody is taken because of your pocket. Yes, and such like things. So how do you expect this person to have got self-control about himself and emotional control? It doesn't have that. We are living in a state where corruption is the order of the day. You give me money, I handle your problems, so it is, even if it is bad or not bad or good or no good.
Yeah.
That is how we live in Kenya.
Thank you,
So,
Ruben.
yes.
Thank you. Let's take a final call from Mombasa. Eric, good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Okay, thank you, sir. I have to also congratulate you, all of you, for this good morning session.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
Yes, and whatever I can see, actually, I'm just living in Mombasa, but my home area is Kisumu. And there was a caller who said that, can you give an incident, or maybe one of you said that, can you give an incident where the people has provoked the police?
Yes.
That one is actual. It is real. I've seen it in my home area, where the policemen were sent to guard, and because it took a lot of time before they act, somebody just went and threw stone inside there. So what do you expect police to do if you throw a stone into their lorry?
Kutupa mawe
That is an
polisi.
incident I've seen. Yeah.
So you're in support of
Throw
the
a
police?
stone in the truck. I support the police because there are some mediocrity in a human being that has to be removed by force. If somebody has gone to school to read and you indulge yourself into these malicious activities by fighting, they have proper channels, and it begins in school. And now that the police officer has come, you can't expect police officer to come and laugh with you.
Are you a policeman yourself?
I'm not a policeman, but I'm a friend to policemen because I like what they do. They need support. They are human beings and they have a force. Policeman will not act until
provoked.
He is instructed to act. They always stand there, check the situation. If the situation is already escalated and it's beyond control and it's going to cause what you call human harm, then they'll be agitated to act.
Eric, how do you explain?
Yeah.
How do you explain what we saw in JKUAT? So this particular student has been subdued. He's already lying on the ground, and then the police officers now continue to hit him and also even stomp on his head. How do you explain that?
Okay, that was according to me. I see it was excessive force.
Okay.
But there was supposed to be a way these people would handle. I think that the student was a lady. And I do believe that the force that can come from a lady is not so much for police to act in such a manner. So it's one way or the other. They also have respect themselves, the students themselves. I was having a canteen next to our college, and one day when we went on rampage, the student came and destroyed the whole of my shop.
So you're a victim of student brutality.
Yes, they took everything. Not because that I was wrong. I wasn't even understanding what they were doing. But because I was just having a continuance with the school, they came and did all the distractions. I went at a loss over 300,000.
Paul Esan, Eric, and thank you very much for calling in this morning.
Really supporting them.
Asante.
Okay.
Well, the conversation continues on the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Our Twitter hashtag is the Situation Room, and also our Facebook page, Spice FM KE. It continues. Good morning, 21 minutes past 7 o'clock.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So we got a call from Paul who said he's listening in Nyeri and it's very clear. It's on 90.9. That's a frequency in Nyeri. In Kisumu, where we had Ruben, it's 102.5, and Eric is in Mombasa on 87.9. Eldoret 96.7, Malindi 97.7, Nairobi is 94.4. Of course, Nakuru is 96.0. We broadcast every morning on our Facebook page as well, Spice FM KE. We are on live streaming on YouTube on Spice FM KE, and our website is www.spicefm.co.ke. Spice FM is the first and only 24-hour audio-visual radio station in the country, which means that we're not just broadcasting audio. We also have cameras and lights in the studio. You can actually tune in and view the Situation Room as it happens. Our hashtag on Twitter is the Situation Room. 22 minutes past 7 o'clock. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga, Jerry Thorne, and Nduoko. CT.
In 2007, something very interesting happened. We had complaints and we had issues, and the country seemed to have actually, it was ablaze. Now, in the middle of all this, there were young people who were not only burning things but throwing things, and the police were at hand. Something unusual happened, something that had never been seen, and I don't think it has been seen since. The GSU, General Service Unit, is one of the most dreaded security forces we have in this country. Dreaded. When I say dreaded, I mean dreaded, because they are a paramilitary group and they are, among other things, known to mete out violence that is difficult to surpass. Now, on that particular occasion when the youth were in full flight, full throttle with mayhem, there's one particular gentleman, a police officer. His name was Tinge. He stepped up and he confronted the young men. And he raised a simple question, he said, young people, you built this country now. Why are you seeking to destroy this country that you have built? And whatever they were doing stopped. They talked among themselves, they stopped. An unusual situation. A police officer. Not a demonstration. This was a full-blown riot. But that's not what I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about the riot that the rainfall is causing in our country. I'm calling it a riot because it's uncontrolled, it's everywhere, and it's causing problems. When we talk about rain, if you went to a primary school or a nursery school and you're taught nursery rhymes, one of the things that we're taught, now given my age, if I can remember what I was taught in nursery school, just for reference purposes, it was the previous century. But there is this poem by a gentleman called Samuel Taylor Coleridge, and it is the rhyme of the ancient mariner. That is the title of the poem. It says, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink. People know about it, and sometimes you wonder, what does it mean? Well, it means having a lot of something, but not being able to make much use of it. It's there, it's useful, but you can't make much use of it. Now, we live in a time when the issues of rain in quantities that you actually don't need, that is harmful, is news all over the world. Venice, which is actually known for cities that seem to have been already submerged in water, are getting even bigger problems. The water levels are rising even higher, and this is because of the rains. Literally all over the world. But the thing that caught our attention is not the usual water spots, the Nyando region or Budalangi. These are the areas in Kenya that often are at the brunt of heavy rainfall. No, this time it was Mombasa. People who are not just wading through water, cars were being submerged literally with water. And I think what makes it even strange is that Mombasa is an island. It's already surrounded by water. But what is significant about Mombasa and what is not known is that Mombasa is actually the oldest city we have in this country. And if we were to go by the history, books of the history, that it was formed in 900 AD. That was a long time ago. And the history of Mombasa is just the number of people who've come to Mombasa either to trade, but mostly to rule over it. And they've exchanged hands. Now, why do I think this history is important? It's because when you have a civilization, it means that city was planned. When I say planned, it means it was planned for habitation because it was a commercial center. Anything that was considered modern that was brought by the people who were trading with it. Remember, Mombasa was trading with China, Persia, India. Long before the Omani Arabs even came into being. The Portuguese came in and sort of like passed by. Or the Mazrui Arabs. These are people who interacted with Mombasa. But it was a city that was actually organized. It was a city that was organized like any other important city port that you could think of in that time of history. What this also told you was this: they had a system of management, a system of authority. It also meant they had a way in which the citizenry could actually survive. They had a way of supplying water. They had a way of ensuring that people moved, meaning they had pathways or roads that were passable. Everything that made it possible for trade to actually be easy and for it to be possible. Now, we fast forward this thing to the 21st century, and we have a situation where the oldest city in our country is actually submerging in water, and the people who run the county do not seem to have an inkling as to what it is they could do to allay this.
To allay what?
This catastrophe.
Okay, so this is what the people of Mombasa are saying about the floods that are ongoing.
Kufikia usiku wa manane tukiwa tumelala, nikaamshwa maji imeingia kwa nyumba. So tukangangana kutoa watoto wakaenda kwa jirani, kabaki na mke wangu kujaribu kuhifadhi vitu, lakini hatukufanikiwa. So tumefunga nyumba, tumehama, tuko kwa jirani, mimi niko kwa ofisi kwanza. Hata nguo mkiangalia zimebaki ndani, TV na vitu zingine zote zimeachwa ndani, sofa sets zote zimezama kwa maji, chakula iko ndani, makaa iko ndani.
Tunaomba serikali mahali popote, kuanzia mbunge, gavana, hata MPA wa huku, waungane wasaidie hili jambo. Sisi tunataka hata kama ni bridge hapa ijengwe, ili wananchi wa hapa ama wavukaji wa hii barabara wapate afueni, yani usafiri huo unaweza kupatikana.
Unapoangalia upande ule utaona nyumba zimeingia maji kabisa. Nyumba moja ni karibu imefunikwa. Dormitory zetu za wanafunzi zimefunikwa kabisa na maji. Ukiangalia upande mwingine utaona kwamba hatujui mvua itaendelea kiasi gani. Tunaona hata maofisi yetu itaathiriwa kabisa. Kwa hivyo mambo yetu yote yamesimama na imekuwa.
Well, those are citizens of Mombasa telling you in very clear terms how it is. And this isn't something that they're used to. It rains in Mombasa. In 2018 it rained. This particular deluge is unusual. And yet, we haven't heard from the authorities, have we?
We haven't heard from the authorities?
No, we haven't.
Speaking to whom? To us or to the people of Mombasa?
Well, if I were the authorities of the county of Mombasa, I would be speaking to the citizenry of Mombasa.
He's been in hospital, though. I mean,
so the governor has been in
the
hospital. The county government has reacted to this, of course. They've,
what have they said?
They've deployed. Is it? Do you want them to say or do you want them to do?
If you're going to do something, you need to tell people what it is you're going to do.
Well, that's the people. We should ask the people of Mombasa, actually. So have you heard from the management, the county government of Mombasa? From, the top leadership all the way to the people who should be operating on this.
Are we blaming this on infrastructure in Mombasa and lack of development with a growing population? Because you do see, even in cities that are very developed in the West, we've seen floods recently. And those are cities that don't need any further infrastructure. It's just maybe the river burst its banks because of the heavy downpour. So it's not something that maybe they actually need to build and invest in. It's a one-off occurrence. Could that be the case that even in Mombasa, okay, there's a higher population than there was when the civilization came about, no doubt. But it's not a matter of infrastructure. It's just the heavy downpour was uncontrollable in this instance.
Is it the first time that we've had floods in Mombasa?
Nope.
Exactly.
It's not the first time that we have floods in Mombasa.
Now, look at what is even happening in Venice. It's interesting because in Venice, what are people doing? They're standing in the middle of the street where there's water and they're taking pictures because they've never seen something like this before. But the water is not getting into their homes because even with the excess water that's coming into the streets, there is a planned infrastructure way of getting the water out. There is drainage that happens and is actually maintained year on end. I actually went through and read this story. And what happens in that particular city, for example, is that year on year, the system, the drainage system is maintained, and they actually were able to predict these floods that were going to take place, and they made sure that there was added work that was done on the infrastructure of the city to make sure that it did not affect people on an individual basis in their homes and their families. We see the exact opposite happening here in Mombasa. And that's why I asked, is it the first time that we've seen floods? Could we assume or could we predict that something like this would happen in the future? And we have people's entire livelihoods literally being washed away because of the water. The infrastructure is directly affected. And we talked about a city that was planned. Was trade years and years and years ago. So somebody wakes up and says they're going to do something about it in 2019, and we've had this problem before severally. So what am I saying? It goes beyond just saying, well, maybe it's something that could be done. There's something that has to be done with almost a solution of permanency to make sure that it doesn't affect people to the level at which it affected them.
The meteorological department
acts of nature.
No, the meteorological
same acts of nature have affected those in Italy.
The meteorological department has been warning us about this
that we expect
for
floods.
quite some time.
Yes.
And they even mention hotspots. They say expect this here
in areas of
and
the
they
coast.
name the towns.
They
name them
in northeastern areas and northeastern parts of the
and
we've
had floodings in those places.
All right, let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and then we continue with this conversation. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Traffic.
All right, Kiambu Road is certainly not civilization. Oh my goodness, yes, it actually is. Really, this morning, from pictures that we are seeing, it has become a 6-lane road, and we are...
Say again.
All right, Kiambu Road this morning has become a 6-lane road. Talk about planning. And we're not able to get off that. And remember, we're feeding off onto the thicker superhighway from here. So Kiambu Road is going to bear the brunt of quite a lot of road rage this morning, unfortunately. We have kind of the same now coming out of Mombasa Road just before Green Park at the river. It's flowing well until you get to the Mulolongo section of the road, and then going past Syokimau, and then trying to get to General Motors. So we do have a problem there. Thika Road, of course, we do have an issue there this morning as well. So it's traffic, and not a drop. All right, 0719-012-600 is the number to call. It is quite the traffic situation this morning. Let's see how things unfold in a short while.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
26 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a situation room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have CT Muga, Jerry Thorne, Nduoko. I'm Eric Latif. We're talking about floods in Mombasa. Of course, we've seen floods across the country. We've seen floods in the northern parts of the country, in Mandera, in Wajir. We've also seen heavy floods recently in Mombasa. And people have been affected. We've even played a clip of people saying how they've been affected by this. So, of course, CT Muga is saying that this is an indicator of very many other things of a city as old as Mombasa.
I'm using Mombasa as an example because it isn't as though they were not told, and it isn't as though somebody asked, is it a policy issue? It isn't. Because these things have occurred so often, it didn't happen in Mombasa, we actually have a disaster management policy.
Oh, great.
We do. We even have a disaster operations center, which is supposed to be at the office of the president. Oh, you're talking about the structure and the details of what should be done. Oh, that we have. And I'm not talking about that because that we already have. And when you talk about disasters, you see, we are focusing on floods. Those aren't the only disasters that you can have. Landslides that we have very often, those are considered natural disasters. Now, we don't have earthquakes very often, but that's also a natural disaster. We don't have tsunamis. Those are natural disasters. I'm simply saying we don't have cases of wildfires like they have in Southeast Wales in Australia. We don't, in New South Wales rather, we don't have those things. But they cause as much damage as this. The point I'm making is, how often must someone be forewarned and foretold about something that is going to cause problems to the citizenry? How often must they be warned? You're warned. You're even given a timeline. This is what is going to happen. And you sit back and then it happens.
What do you mean sit back?
Maybe
what do
exactly
you want them
that.
to do? Stop the rain? What?
Oh, good.
Excellent. No.
Or move the... What do you want them
Build
to
a
do?
big umbrella.
Eric has asked a very, very good question, and it must be answered. Whenever you have situations of flooding, there are things you do. And this isn't even something that is clever or advanced. No, basic. Why do you think you have water drainage systems when you build roads? So that water can pass through. Meaning they assume water may come in large quantities. That's why it's called water drainage.
Right.
Okay? Now, if this water drainage is blocked, then the water...
With garbage
will
and
not,
other things.
Yes. Now, part of the problem usually is it is blocked. Someone who's charged with ensuring that they are unblocked hasn't done their job.
It's not a case where it's overburdened because the population has grown and the drainage hasn't grown. Are you sure?
No. I'm starting with the basics.
All right.
Now,
it could also be cleared, but then the floods come with debris, and the debris now comes to block the drainage.
But you see, Eric, now you're answering your own question, and I thank you for it, because if that is the case and we've had flooding before, then you would know this debris would occur again, and then you would mitigate and prepare for it, wouldn't you?
What I think Eric is saying is maybe there's situations where there is no actual solution. But perhaps maybe the county...
For flooding, no.
No.
We've seen it. We saw it in Venice.
Venice
is flooding, and it's actually, you said it wasn't going into people's houses. I saw a museum, water rising up in a museum. Now that's Venice, which is advanced or, a developed country and well planned, and as you said, well maintained.
Let's even go to America.
Venice
in Los
is already
Angeles,
underwater.
there are fires in parts of Los Angeles every year. You can predict. It's fire. In fact, they call it the fire season, right? Are houses burnt? Yes. Are people's property destroyed? Yes. Are there people sometimes who even die during those fires?
It's a force of nature,
yes.
force majeure.
And yet we know it's fire season. So what should the government do? Start running those helicopters pouring water before the fire starts? Boss,
so
there's some things that
if
go
you have
beyond.
fires in Los Angeles and New South Wales, and that their governments haven't planned well, so we should look at them and emulate and say, well, since America doesn't seem to be able to manage this well, it is okay if
planning has happened.
Carry on like that.
No,
Planning
I think what
has
Eric
happened,
is saying
but then
is
there's
that it's
to a
force
certain
majeure. It's
extent.
beyond our control.
All right. What
as
planning
humans.
has taken place? We had this problem last year. Same. Now we have it. Same. So which planning are you
I
speaking
think
of?
what it is, to be honest, CT, as a county, perhaps they have more sort of higher priorities, given that the consequences for this disruption are temporary. Maybe they put their money towards higher priorities in that. No, in that maybe it's a very expensive venture to go into actually changing the whole drainage system. And at the moment, they're developing as a county. They've got to put their money elsewhere. And they look at they don't take too seriously, or there's no gravity placed on the consequences of these floods. They come, they go, and people carry on. They pick up from where they left off. Maybe there's insurance companies.
A simple list of what people do to control floods. Okay, they build dams, they build reservoirs, they build canals for diverting water floods, they build floodways in places where there are trees. They reforest the area. Okay, now all that you're doing is managing the flow of water, because that's what we're complaining about. The rain comes down. There's too much of it.
It doesn't flow.
Yes, that's really it. So what do you do with it? First of all, you make it flow.
A dam is a big undertaking. If we look at the money that were being talked about, money was being
not all
dams
are big undertakings, Jerry. No. You are thinking of the Aurora Dam and the other. No. Not
7
all.
billion.
No.
We had the governor of Laikipia who came here and told us the other day that they did something real quick, hop, skip, and a step away, and they had a couple of dams done through the county. It's possible to be done.
No, dams don't have to be huge undertakings. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
No.
They don't. Do you know the number of dams we have even just within the country? Small dams that nobody ever even hears of, because they don't serve that big purpose for so-called electric generation. No.
And this is what I'm saying. Maybe Mombasa has more pressing issues than building these dams.
Like
the consequences of these floods, education. Mombasa, we know that
the people whose
no
livelihoods are being washed.
There's an ocean nearby.
The people whose livelihoods are being washed away by these same floods are the ones that we are saying that they have higher priorities to take care of. The same people, the same livelihoods that are supposed to be protected by the leaders of the county. Those are not being looked at.
But look, the floods come and go, and people live through it. Kenyans are resilient. The consequences are temporary. The gravity of the consequences clearly doesn't affect the citizenry enough for there to be any uprising, because there would have been. So, I think the local government looks at it and says, oh, well, this will come and go. We've got more pressing issues, more important investments to make, for instance, education, health, and so on, which affects the populace for longer periods of time. It's more important for their livelihoods, as opposed to these floods which last 2 or 3 weeks maximum. Why should we invest?
If we were in an area that is prone to earthquakes, would we use the same argument that, well, they occur just every once in a while. We shouldn't worry too much. A few buildings will collapse.
It depends on our financial muscle. So, for instance, Japan, which is prone to earthquakes, the way they build and their architecture, it takes into account earthquakes. Now, if we as a developing country don't have the economic muscle to do this, then maybe we wouldn't take into account
let me give you an example.
And this is what I'm saying. Mombasa maybe doesn't have the money.
Mombasa County or Mombasa town, this is just a town because this is affecting the town itself, has always had more money than Kisumu town, so to speak. Nyando, a constituency within Kisumu County, is known for flooding. In fact, it's famous for flooding. Absolutely famous.
Is there a river there?
Famous. There's no river.
River Nyando?
There's River Nyando, and then there's the lake. Eric talked about Indian Ocean. They have the lake. The one thing that happened, it happened once, but it lasted many years, that flooding ceased to be a menace. I've mentioned this in this show before, and I'm mentioning it again. And all that the MP of that particular point in time did, he worked with the minister in charge of water in the country at that time, who was Martha Karua. The gentleman who was the MP was called Eric Nyamunga. And the very things that I'm saying here is what they did. But they made sure they built passages. It involves digging up, by the way.
And they put up dikes.
Yeah, it's called, this expense we speak of, we hadn't even gotten into the county system yet at that point in time. But it's just dredging, building, that menace ended.
And I think in Budalangi, they actually harnessed that water for growing rice.
Precisely.
So they
Yes.
capitalized.
Every year it would rain. It didn't rain less the following year. There was no flooding problem. It didn't rain more the year that followed.
And the moral of that story, CT, you mentioned Martha Karua, is that women in leadership would actually come up with solutions.
I mentioned it specifically so that you could pick on it and carry on that argument. Yes, this was the bone I decided to throw at you this morning.
All right. So let's look at Mishimboko, who's the MP for Likoni, and what she's doing. Anyway, so City, you have very good understanding of Mombasa area. You've lived there for many years, all right? So just take us through what exactly happens when it rains. Why does it flood so often and in such a huge way? Is it about drainage? Is it about the soil system and how the soil absorbs water? Is it proximity maybe to the ocean? What is it that makes it
actually
flood?
What is interesting, that soil actually absorbs water fairly quickly. Yes, it isn't black cotton soil that more or less like resists the absorption of water. No, it's sandy loam and on water. It absorbs water. Everything you've mentioned comes into play. Now, when you talked about planning, Jerry talked about planning. When people plan, and these are people who understand this thing far better than I do, they've taken all these things into consideration. You're talking about the population increasing. Of course, they've taken all this into consideration. Now, when you have excess water, even when it rains on a daily basis, let's forget the flooding. When it rains on a daily basis, what happens? That water flows. The flooding that we speak of doesn't occur because that rainfall is whatever quantity it is can easily be managed by the system that is there to control the water.
So Mombasa, why does Mombasa?
That system that they have is inadequate for controlling certain amounts of water.
So it's poor drainage.
It is poor everything. It's the drainage exists because of the planning, and the planning fails because of the execution. So if you have a drainage system that is supposed to cater for, say, something like 20 millimeters of water, and you have 60 millimeters, you will have flooding because it cannot accommodate that amount of water. It's not even anything that's very complicated.
So what's a system that's in Mombasa? What's it built to handle?
As in the number of people it's supposed to build to handle
That's
the population.
Esoteric knowledge.
The
I think you'd have
milliliters
to
of
be
water,
a town planner or an engineer to know that.
No. Let him continue. Yes. How many millimeters of water is it built to
Because
handle?
you're talking about the drainage system, so this drainage system is a planning issue. No.
Get out of here. He's not an engineer.
Wait. Carry on.
He has done his homework for this. What is it that has failed?
3.
When you say it's a drainage, so what is it about the drainage?
I actually said everything you've mentioned has failed. It's not one thing.
The whole system.
Yes, the whole thing. Now, at the beginning of this discussion, I said, if you have a system that gets clogged up, it's not just Mombasa, even here in Nairobi. All it requires is for that system to periodically be cleaned. If it is clogged up, it is blocked, the water will not flow.
So waste management.
It's not complicated. We went back to planning. But where I was heading with my discussion was one of legislation. Because if you have a unique problem in a county, the county government has the mandate to create laws that can bring about the change that they need to suit their purposes.
So you think legal instruments, laws, it's not the goodwill? I mean, there's a lot of laws that the county, they're charged.
Allow me to explain what I mean. One of the things that water is used for is for purposes of daily use. Now, we had a municipality bylaw. I don't know whether it's still in operation or not. I tried to look it up. In the municipality laws, it still exists. Whether it was carried over by the counties, because counties adopted some of the municipality laws, some they didn't. But it insisted that whenever a structure, a building was put up for human habitation, it must have two things. It must have a catchment area for water, meaning the gutters around the roof, but it also must have a storage capacity for water. So that over and above the water that was supplied by the government, you would have a supply of water that came from the rains. Now, what this does is it immediately ensures that the water that you get in that abundance has a place where it goes to, where it is stored, and it can be used. So this automatically lessens the pressure on this water that you expect to come through the pipes all the time. It's a legislation issue. That is why I brought us in legislation, so that anyone who puts up a building for people to live in will be mandated to ensure. Yes, if
they're harvesting the water.
Yes, if you have people, if let's say you build an estate and 100 people, then you are mandated to ensure that you have the capacity to harvest water that would serve these people, not for eternity, but for the period in which they can store that water for use. Now, that's the legislation I'm speaking of. So that's one thing you put this water to, the good use you put this water to. The other thing that where legislation comes in is mandating every citizen to ensure that whatever it is that is within the space that they live in that will guarantee this particular passage of water is fulfilled. Now, I know it sounds far-fetched. I visited Kigali some times back, and I was amazed at the order that I saw. The manicured lawns, trees planted. And I asked, how do they maintain it? Someone told me, well, among other things, of course, you have people whose duty it is to do this, but every month for half a day, the entire country, including the president, comes together to clean. All right? Everyone cleans. So when everybody has that responsibility of making sure it's clean, no one's going to allow you to throw paper.
So waste will be managed.
Yes. I'm simply saying that there are situations where you can involve the citizenry. So it's not just the government is to be blamed here. No. There are solutions that can be found, and some of it can be solved through legislation. This is really what I'm trying to tell you.
0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. We're discussing floods, especially this morning, floods in Mombasa. And I'd like to ask CT's neighbors in Mombasa to call in also and tell us what their view is on what the government has to do, or it should do, or has failed to do, and what the citizenry could also do, and also the force of nature. What could nature do to ensure that it doesn't flood again? It's 11 minutes to 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. 0719-012-600.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Just in case, if you're listening to Eric Latif, Eric is actually trying to claim that I have a bias, and I am talking about Mombasa because I lived there for a very, very long time.
I think he's also trying to get you to play the son to Mother Nature and tell us, that you're brother Nature, and tell us what Mother Nature would do.
But Eric, I thank you for highlighting that. Yes, I lived in Mombasa for the longest time possible. And yes, it isn't Mombasa alone.
Can I just interject before you build? There was something I wanted to come to that you had mentioned before we went into the break, and it's your reliance on legislation. It's somewhat utopian. I mean, we have a lot of laws, and you, CT, of all people, know that theft, for instance, or corruption. There's laws against that. They've been there since time immemorial. They don't actually guide people's behavior in Kenya, as we've seen. People do as they like, as they will, when they like. So, in instituting or in creating statutes and laws that mandate the government, whether it's local or national, to put certain structures up, it doesn't then mean that these will be followed, as we've seen. Absolutely. So I don't think legislation is actually the solution.
Actually, Jerry, you do have a point, but let me add to it. You see, legislation is not supposed to bring an immediacy of the practice of law. No, that's not what it does. It takes advantage of a situation such as this one, where people think they can get away with everything, and you create a law. The truth of the matter is this: time is a great arbiter. Right now, I'm explaining. Right now, you have a situation where people are being arrested. We keep saying, they're being arrested, but they're being arrested like they've never been arrested before. It wouldn't be possible if the laws were not.
If there was no law.
Yes. So enact the laws, not for the present, but also for the future.
Let's go to Mombasa.
Yes.
87.9. Zach, good morning.
Morning to you, Eric. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you so much. Kindly greet everyone there.
We return the greetings.
Thank you, City.
Karibu sana.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Wale wakubwa shikamoo.
Marhaba.
Marahaba. Yes. Enyewe amejaribu sio?
Amejaribu sana.
Ameshika line. Zach, you told us the other day that you were swimming in Mombasa.
Yes. Thank God I managed.
Right.
You got to the other side.
And I survived, but unlike you, hakuna mamba huku, there are no crocodiles.
Unlike,
you were listening.
Unlike Tena.
Unlike Tena, there's no crocodiles in Mombasa. So
Okay.
we thank God.
So tell us about the flooding.
Yes, I wanted to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I know quite some time Mombasa has been like a mockery. And I had somebody saying, I think she was trying to be sarcastic, that Mombasa has more pressing needs than flooding. And which I agree. Which I agree to some extent, because we spend our money in big bash, inviting big concerts. I mean, things that have never been done within any county government. Yes, that's what we know. Tunajua kusakata viuno. Alikiba, Diamond and whatever. So it is true that our priorities are misplaced as a country. Which is very true, and we need to laugh about it, be sarcastic about it, until it thinks somebody to do something which is, I think, more productive than that. So about flooding, you asked City about how old the drainage, the size of the drainage.
Yes.
This drainage system, according to my understanding, and I've not done much research because there's no research to be done, were built during Vasco da Gama era. So they can hardly contain any flooding of any magnitude.
We're talking about 1493.
Yes.
No.
They are
700 years ago.
They are so old, so ancient, they can't serve us, and the government is doing absolutely nothing to elevate that problem. A week after the floods, you will see county government people removing that plastics from the drainage systems, these manholes. Surprisingly, they remove them from the manholes and then place them right beside it, without collecting those garbage.
Yeah.
So whenever it rains again, zinarudi pale pale ndani. Unashindwa hawaelewi ni nini mbaya. You can't really tell, but there's a very serious issue of planning in Mombasa County. I don't know if it is deliberate, because I think laws they are there.
Zach, what would you like to see? Would you like to see an entire re-engineering of the drainage system? Is that possible, even?
I think it is possible, but people don't want to do it. They have misplaced priority. Plus, there are new estates coming up every day in Mombasa, outskirts of town. You'll be shocked. There are no planning. They are building haphazardly. There are no drainage systems. There's no fire hydrants, mean safety. There's no concern about safety, about anything.
Do they have sewage systems?
Everybody digs his own sewage system. And wherever you pale unaelekeza ndio kunaenda. Ukitaka iende hivi inaenda hivyo. Ukitaka irudi hivi nyuma inarudi hivyo nyuma.
It's up to you, the way you see it.
Control whatsoever.
Right.
It's free for all. What you can do, just do whatever you want.
Thank you, Zach.
And these are new towns that are coming up every day.
Thank you very much, Zach.
Call Governor Joe and tell him to do something.
We'll call them and ask them what they're doing about it. Asante sana. 0719-012-600. We are talking to the residents of Mombasa and also everybody around the country. I mean, floods have been there, not just in Mombasa, but also in many other parts of the country. It's about the issue of fiscal planning as well. That's what he's talking about, the physical planning, rather, where you have new developments that are coming up seemingly unplanned.
Talking about overhauling the system, it can be overhauled. When you had cases, we've had cases in the media of lead poisoning in water. It's actually in the West, in the U.S. And what they've done is change the pipes, the lead pipes, to copper pipes. But they've overhauled them. Meaning they've understood that human lives are more important than anything else that they can talk about. So here, their actions meet their talk. But here we have a situation where you're being asked. Eric asked me a question which I didn't answer directly, because when I did my homework, I couldn't find any information about when this thing was last overhauled. So perhaps somebody who's in the engineering department, in the planning, who has
Maybe it's never been overhauled.
who has more recent information can give the information. I couldn't find it.
Oh, it's possible that what was, initially established as infrastructure is what is still being used to operate today. Is that also a possibility?
Yes, as I said, I couldn't get sufficient. I simply just couldn't find information on this. So I couldn't give information on what I couldn't find. But I'm certain the people who are in departments that are charged with this, who have that information,
they'll be able to tell us.
Yes, if they're called in, they'll be able to tell us exactly what it is that is there and explain in further detail. Remember, I am talking about a human problem, and I'm trying to look at it and ask, what is it that could have been done? And I started with the basic. You have a system that gets clogged. Basic. It's not scientific. Water needs to travel. Are you providing it with a passage that will make it easy for it to travel? How do you think rivers are caused? It doesn't start with the river. No, it never does. It is a small passageway that the water has found. More water creates more space. And before long, if there's a lot of water over a long period of time, it becomes a flowing system of water. It becomes a river, a rivulet, a stream, whatever it is. Now, in the same way, if the Mombasa County does not mitigate, then what you're going to do is this water is going to find other functions, and the functions will not necessarily be useful for the human beings who live within that county.
We want to hear from the people of Mombasa. This is 0719-012-600. We'll also be seeking to get answers from the county government of Mombasa on what these questions that we are asking. The disaster preparedness, the disaster management as well, and also the infrastructure that they have in place and what its capacity is. That's 0719-012-600. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation at 8 o'clock. Good morning.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, so Mombasa Road traffic is not so painful right now. Everybody's moving along Mombasa Road, and things seem to have opened up. Unfortunately, coming out of Bagavi Way, it is a complete standstill, and there is some major congestion being witnessed there now. However, there is a road that is being constructed just off Bagavi Way, coming out through Upper Hill, that you would be able to access the city centre through. Well, it has started. We don't know when that will be complete, but there is hope that you'll be able to use that. All right, traffic from Langata Road all the way from Bomas to the Southern Bypass is actually building up. Okay, it has built up. It's traffic. It's huge. You're not going to be able to get out of it if you're already in it, at least for the next half hour. It's moving intermittently. That's the new word for the day. Bagavi Way is also, as we said, seeing some issue. Coming off of Thika Road is getting a little less painful than it was over the last few days. Getting into the city centre and using all the avenues that you can to get there. Apart from that, nothing major going on. Tell us if you do see something, and we'll try and spread the word as best we can. 0719-012-600 is the number to call.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
The phone lines are open. What's the situation in Mombasa? We're taking in calls rather. Jeff, good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Salama kabisa. Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you. How is everybody in the room?
Fine, thank you.
Very well, thank you.
So, I've been following up this issue.
Yes.
All the way from Kuala and Africa Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
We have a major problem in Mombasa.
Mm.
And I think the major problem we have here is, I can divide it into two. One is lack of political goodwill. And the second one I can say is poor planning. Maybe they're intertwined somewhere, but that is how I can put it. Because, for example, look at the stretch from corner NYS or Kuteremka Navy all the way to the ferry. We only have one small mtaro that has been here for ages. This is the time they are trying to rehabilitate it. The mtaro is actually covered most of the times. The areas that are open cannot be able to contain all the water. We have like 5 spots between the first intersect where you find some cameras to ferry. You've got like 5 spots that water is permanently flooded. I found the guys drilling on the road, and I was asking them, "What are you guys doing? Where do you expect to take this water?" And they'll tell you they're intending to put up a well and the water will drain. The thing that they are drilling is around maybe around 12 millimeters diameter, and you wonder, is this thing going to do anything? But the other part I'm saying is there's no garbage collection, like one of you was saying there. This thing is intertwined. You don't pick up garbage, and if you don't pick up garbage, then you're having a problem here.
Right.
So I think those are the two problems.
Asante sana, Jeff. Philip, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Naweza tumia Kiswahili tafadhali?
Ni sawa.
Tafadhali endelea.
Ni sawa. Nasema kuwa drainage system ya koloni ndio nzuri zaidi hata kushinda ile ambao wanajenga siku hizi. Manake za ukoloni unapata kando ya barabara kuna kitu walikuwa wanatengeza kinaitwa happy decks ambacho kina collect takataka. Kazi ni kutoa pale ile shimo, yani mtaro wake wenyewe uko kando na umefunikwa vizuri au ingi takataka, lakini hizi wanatengeza sahi mwanzo siko sloppy. Maji yakiingia pale yanaenda pole hayaendi speed. Kwa hivyo kukiwa na blockage kidogo inaziba tayari. Alafu ziko open, takataka yoyote inaingia pale. Pili, wakitoa takataka wanaweka hapo kando. Mvua ikinyesha tena, manake ni daily basis, inaingia tena pale. Sasa yani management na engineering iko na shida. Yani hapa ni shida tu, si ati ni mvua nyingi. Drainage ya kitambo wakiangalia engineering yake ndio nzuri zaidi kushitahili kwa sababu
pia.
Na takataka pia nayo uwa kwa municipality wako yani kamba yako lazy. Hakufanyi kazi vile inavyotakikana.
Asante sana Philip, asante sana.
Makes a good point, interesting point, that the system is there. It's just not as well designed as previous systems, and it's got some faults that probably need seeing too. So the system is there.
Brian is from Mombasa, but he's currently in Nakuru. Good morning, Brian.
Yeah, good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
I wanted to add on the Mzee's comment. City's comment. You see, I come from Mombasa. And the problem, as he has said, it's about legislation. Because when you look at the devolution, there are functions that have been devolved to counties, to county government. And one of the functions that was has been devolved is the water function. Now, when you look at the water function, there is what we call unbundled and an unbundled function of water function. counties have been given a mandate to check on the water management, sanitation in towns. Now, the problem in Mombasa is the county assembly has never, since inception, has never enacted a county legislation to take care of the sanitation of Mombasa. I come from Kiembeni. It's an estate that was built a long time ago. And the sanitation in that estate was meant to serve a household of 6 or 4 people. What has happened over time, you find people erecting gorofa in a sewer line which is meant to serve 6 people. Now, you clearly see there's no connection between the planning and the authority that is giving this right to do the advancement, if it is erecting buildings and so forth. So clearly, we have a problem that needs to be addressed in Mombasa.
Okay.
And I actually call upon the county assembly and the county government to seriously look into this issue.
Asante.
Because over time we cannot continue to live like this.
Can I ask you, have you ever seen any kind of works taking place in the city to look at maintenance or even overhauling? Because that was one thing that we were asking ourselves today.
No, they have to start with the outskirts.
So it has never happened?
It has never happened. Even the outskirts, I'm telling you, you see an estate sewer line that was meant to serve 5 buildings, for example. It is currently serving over 30 buildings.
Okay.
Asante sana, Brian.
Okay.
Grace is in Bamburi in Mombasa. Good morning, Grace.
Morning, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Mombasa problem mostly is about poor planning. Because there's drainage system that is failing year in, year out. Like the person who is calling from Kiembeni, there's water that falls all the way from Kiembeni down going to the Pirates beach. Where that water passes, there's only a bridge at former Naivas. Then the rest of the water flows, they even don't know where that water flows. It gets into people's homes. People pass through the water to cross. It is just hell. So how much I wish, if they've built a bridge from former Naivas, can they please check where that water is flowing to and have bridges in other areas connecting all the way to Pirates? They can get a good example of the bridge that was built going to JCC, Pastor Start, in favor of William Ruto.
Yeah.
There's a bridge that passes that same water comfortably, and people use that route comfortably. Can we have bridges built, especially in Soliani 1 estate? We're having a hell out of that place.
Asante sana, Grace.
I don't know where Mbogo is who can hear this, and Maimuna, who are our MPs and women representatives. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Grace. Valid points that have been raised by the residents of Mombasa City. And some of them are even talking about legislation. Yes, there is a drainage system. There is the maintenance of the same drainage system, and seeing.
The real there's a health problem here that I deliberately left out. When you have this sort of flooding, what happens is this: you have soak pits, all right, that overflow, and when they overflow, there's no telling where they could overflow to. They overflow into wells. They overflow into places where people get water for daily usage from. But over and above this, when they say this water flows, all this and this mixture that I'm painting, when you have a situation where it's now flowing into houses. So by the time this water goes down, you are staring at a public health nightmare, because people are going to fall sick. Not they might fall sick.
They will.
They will fall sick. Now, this is a reality that this sort of situation brings about. Eric? All right, so I can continue. You see, what I wanted to say was this. of all the elements that bring about natural disaster, whether it's a typhoon, a volcano, there is wind. There is none that plays a dual role of actually being useful and then as well being destructive. Water is the only one that does that.
Right.
You need it for life, and yet, if it isn't managed properly, it is damaging to catastrophic heights.
What seems to puzzle me now, even just with the number of people who are calling in, everybody seems to have an idea of a solution that could come through. And they are aware that these are things that we can actually, they will even tell you, the last lady that we had who spoke to us just now, she's even giving examples of where these things can be done, where a bridge can be built, where an underpass can be made so that the water finds a way to get out of the city. And these are laymen like you and I. Now, if they can have the solutions, how much more government, which is tasked with the job to be technical at this point and to be able to get something done? So we're not talking about some ambiguous thing that's up in the sky and hoping that it'll be translated into human speak. It's something that can actually be envisioned. It's seen. This is clear. This can be done. It can be carried out. And
So
should be done.
Let's ask the questions from the county government. I have on the line Mr. Charles Karisa Changawa. He's the Deputy Director of the Inspectorate in charge of enforcement and operations. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us in the Situation Room.
Yes.
Now, of course, we're discussing the what's happening in Mombasa, what's been happening, of course, the floods. And you've been listening in, of course. You've heard what the residents of Mombasa are saying, issues of drainage, issues of planning, issues of management. So let's begin from the very beginning where we even started. This rain had been, predicted by the Kenya Meteorological Service, and you'd been warned as a county and as a
preventing these people from finding themselves in a situation where they need rescuing. So actually building the infrastructure that would take in this rain and ensure that they don't have, there's no flooding. What's the county? What's the county doing about that?
You see, let's say in terms of the infrastructure and whatever, it's the Department of Roads and Infrastructure. But our main aim as inspectorate is just to enforce and to try to assist the residents where possible.
Right.
Yeah, so I think the right person who can answer the question of drainage and what is the chief officer or the CEC of roads and infrastructure. Yeah, transport.
As an inspectorate, your job is, and you're saying you're the deputy director in charge of enforcement and operations. So enforcement also, I'm sure, would come into areas of looking at how littering is happening and collection of garbage, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because also people are calling in and saying we have a lot of garbage which ends up in the drainage systems, which ends up clogging the drainage systems.
Yeah.
So what do you do about that, like ensuring that we don't have as much garbage onto the system?
Yeah. We are trying our level best because, as you know, Mombasa is not a small town. It's a big town. So we normally organize ourselves as enforcers or law enforcers. We divide ourselves into sub-counties. And we normally stationed our officers. You said that there are places which have been selected to be where we can drop the garbages and whatever. But generally, you see, the discipline should start with the residents themselves. At least we must have engagement between the law enforcers and the residents to get the right the right place to dump our garbages. Not everywhere.
Right.
Like now, yeah.
So finally, as we let you go, you have told us about having rescued 250 families, and where are they so far, and what's the situation with that? How long do you foresee you supporting them?
Yeah, you see, currently we don't have enough, enough for money at least to sustain them. But what we have done as enforcers, we have been trying to talk to them, at least if they can join their families, the neighbors, for the time being. That is not a lasting solution. That is just a temporary solution to ask them to join their relatives or what, because if they continue to stay on that particular area which is affected, we might lose life, and we are not for that. Yeah. So we are trying to do our level best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Changawa. Thank you very much for joining us this morning in the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, Eric, it's on record that the county government of Mombasa actually constructed stormwater drainage systems within the county. But actually, it was within the former municipality of Mombasa. But the areas that are now being flooded, like Kisauni, isn't mentioned. They mention Majengo, Old Malindi Road, Hongera. They talk about Sokomjinga, Sisi kwa Sisi, Flamingo, Wayani, Mwijabu Primary School, Likoni Flats. But Kisauni doesn't
feature.
That area around doesn't quite feature. Now, what happened to this system? It's reported it was built. I believe it was. So what is it? The only thing that could happen is that they've been blocked. Because if you build a stormwater drainage, it means you've understood.
You've understood there's an issue.
That's why it's called a stormwater drainage system. There'll be lots and lots and lots of water flowing through it. But what has happened? And what about the other areas? Why were they
could be blocked, or it could be this particular time it has been overpowered. Maybe there's
you know
excess.
What planning does, Eric? If you've been having, say, 200 millimeters of rain, you don't build water
for 210.
No. You build for 400. Okay, that's what will maintain. So that in the event that there's an overflow, you have, because you don't want to keep building it. So you build it once and you take the future into consideration.
Thank you very much for all your calls this morning on 0719-012-600, and also for the conversations happening on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook Spice FMKE, and Twitter via the hashtag The Situation Room. It's 20 minutes past 8 o'clock. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation where we talk about everything that's happening in the country and also beyond our borders, and we localize it. In the Situation Room, we have Eric Latif, Nduoko, C.T. Muga, and Jerry Thorne.
Why do you speak of yourself in third person, Eric? Very scary.
What did I say?
You said we have Eric Latif.
Yeah, but
we
are
have
you
myself,
guys
Eric Latif.
So do I have to say we have me, Eric Latif, and then we have you, Nduoko, and the other one there? All right. Yes, Jerry.
Right. Of course, the aftermath, fallout, and political rhetoric from Kibra continues. We're a politically charged nation, and the papers and the media are back to having a good time, considering, there had been no elections for a while. Now they're being given a platform through which to politic and charge the nation yet again. We're now looking at MPs ganging up against DP Ruto, the handshake MPs, they're calling them. Of course, for the longest, we've spoken of the two factions within Jubilee, Kiweleke and Tanga Tanga. So now over 25 leaders are asking DP to be courageous and confront his boss instead of fighting the president's appointees. Claims against DP Ruto include that he has been undermining his his boss. We'll be discussing that in a lot more detail. Also that he's fighting the president's initiatives, including the BBI, and that his allies are discrediting Uhuru's administration, and that his allies are blackmailing state officers like CS Matiang'i and PS Kibicho for political gain. So this is all very interesting. What is becoming increasingly clear is that the DP is not towing what we would call the party line, which of course goes against the ideology of belonging to a party. But we could also argue that it is unconstitutional, because if we look at the constitutional role of the DP, it says here under Article 147, where it lists out the functions of the Deputy President. The Deputy President shall be the principal assistant of the President and shall deputize for the President in the execution of the President's functions. The Deputy President shall perform the functions conferred by his by this Constitution and any other functions of the President as the President may assign. And then it goes on to subject to Article 134, which is not material in this discussion, considering we're discussing the role of the President, rather the Deputy President. Now, I want us to look at the definition of deputize, because if we look at the Constitution, it uses that terminology. So if just a simple Google check or, looking at the dictionary, if we look at deputize, it talks about acting in place of somebody else. If you're acting in place of somebody else, what you're doing is actually doing what he would want you to do, whether or not he's there. And we've seen Ruto go against some initiatives. We know he's completely against the handshake, and the handshake is something that the president was for. No doubt or debate about that. It's not rhetoric. It's something he's come out very clearly on and has been pushing cohesion and peace through the Building Bridges initiative, going around the country, finding out what people want, but most importantly, bringing the country together after a very divisive election in 2017. Of course, the president, the deputy president rather, DP Ruto, is going against this, which means he is violating the Constitution. If you look at his role as per the Constitution, and then we understand what deputizing means, the fact that he's not upholding the president's initiatives, forget towing the party line, means that he is violating the Constitution, which are grounds for impeachment, because there's been talk of getting the deputy president to resign or looking at ways where we can amend the Constitution whereby the president has powers to sack his deputy should he become rogue mid-term. Rogue, for lack of a better word, but just, show dissent or show conflict in his agenda as opposed to the president's agenda. So in terms of impeachment, there's grounds for impeachment there. So we don't even need the laws that are being proposed by some MPs. We don't need to make those constitutional amendments to sack the DP. But the question is, are the tribal ties stronger? So we can speak very legally, look at the constitutional framework and so on, but we all as Kenyans understand that what supersedes the law is our sentiments and our feelings. And we know the president cannot sack the deputy president, given the coalition that came together as tribal agreements in 2013. So it becomes very difficult, even if we amended the law, even if we amend the Constitution, even if we try and use the Constitution as it is to impeach the deputy president, there's roots that run a lot deeper than the constitutional framework that we've been given, and we simply cannot sack the DP. So what we're asking him to do, please toe the party line, and unless you resign, stay in line with the party's ideology, which at the moment is the handshake. Also, the party has asked that we stop the electioneering tendencies, because these create political instability. We want to focus on the Big Four agenda. We want to focus on development, and this actually shakes development. Of course, there's the BBI initiative and the referendum coming up. So it would be very interesting to see which side of the referendum, if indeed there is one, the deputy president would be campaigning for, because it goes against all norms, all party norms, when there's something as important as a constitutional referendum. If somebody within the party, in this case the deputy president, is actually going against what the party has initiated. At this stage, I think...
And the party here is the party leader, not necessarily the structures of the party.
Well, the party leader runs the party, isn't it? When you say
the
structures,
party is run by structures. There's a national executive...
It's democratic and so on, but the buck stops with the party leader. The party leader, this is his initiative. So my assertion today is that the MPs ganging up, as the newspaper has put it, against DP Ruto are well within their rights to actually ask him to resign, because there's been a violation of the constitution. He has not toed the party line. It becomes impossible to sack him or impeach him, because we all understand the tribal allegiances and the possible sort of uprising and outcry that there would be if we did try and impeach or if we did try and sack him. So the best thing for him to do is actually resign, start your own party, follow your own ideologies, continue with your electioneering, and let Kenya remain peaceful with initiatives such as the BBI.
Has the deputy president ever come out to say, I do not support the handshake?
I think in politics, you don't have to actually say things. He's done more action than words. No, hold on.
He has come out to say, I support the handshake.
Actions speak louder than words.
Yes,
we know what he did. Actions speak louder than words. Eric, I can tell you I love you, but if I don't behave that way, you will know I don't love you. So actions speak louder than words. In the deputy president fielding a Jubilee candidate in the Kibra recently Kibra by-elections, that speaks volumes, because what you're doing there is you're agitating Raila in his home turf. BBI, the handshake, is all about reconciliation between communities. What you don't want to do in a turf such as Kibra is come and actually ignite any tensions, any rivalry. What you want is collaborative leadership. You want to be working together. What the DP did in fielding Mariga speaks volumes as to his sentiments on the handshake. And we've heard...
I think when we talk about like the Kibra by-election and the kind of elections and the rhetoric that we have, it takes us back to political party governance and political party democracy. Because if a member of a political party, for example, does not agree with what the party leader thinks, they have every right within the party structures to actually voice their concern and their dissent.
Yes, it can
right?
be done through legal structures, official structures.
If a party, for example, if we are saying that McDonald Mariga, who the DP was campaigning for, was an independent candidate or belonged to another political party, then we could say that the DP has gone against Jubilee as a party. But Jubilee as a party fielded a candidate. Jubilee's deputy party leader did not write to IEBC to say this is our candidate. The Secretary General of the party wrote to the IEBC saying this is our candidate. The party's internal organs went about identifying the actual suitable candidate for the party. And this is the National Elections Board of the party organs, not Ruto saying this is it. We also saw the party leader have a photo op with the deputy party leader and
them capitalize on the fact that he put a hat on Mariga, whereas all other party leaders were on the ground actually campaigning. We've discussed the significance of Uhuru's non-involvement in that campaign.
And the optics play a major role in what you see and what you...
And we could also say that because we don't know what the kind of conversations that they have, because we see them meeting just recently, the day before yesterday, we saw the deputy president and the president together at the opening of the ICPD conference. They work together. They work together.
The international community.
There's camaraderie, and we can see it publicly. The actions are speaking actually louder than the words of this Kieleweke people.
You've got to be absolutely blind and naive, Eric, not to see what I'm talking about.
I can see what you're talking about.
Eric understands it perfectly, I think.
He's chosen to ignore it.
No.
He's chosen to provide a different perspective.
Right.
I'm choosing to give this other perspective, which is what I am seeing as the perspective
you're seeing
that I'm
it.
seeing. Yes.
This is
and what I see here
genuine
is
position. It's not for the sake of debate.
It's actually not. It's what I am seeing here, for example, is a political party that has structures. And if we say that the deputy president has gone against the structures of the political party, then the political party has every right to take action against its deputy leader who's going against the norms of the party. In fact, I would say that these MPs who were talking yesterday, who were openly campaigning for a candidate of a different political party, are the ones that need to be disciplined by the party.
Yeah, that's one view to take.
Eric, I mean, if we're to get the facts right, you said that the deputy president supported the BBI. He didn't. It was conditional. Remember?
Not BBI, handshake.
Even handshake.
Okay.
How is the handshake to materialize and crystallize? You think the handshake was just that? The handshake is a gesture. It's iconic. It's symbolic.
Yes.
But the BBI is then what will bring into crystallization the intentions of the handshake.
Is the constitutional amendment move. The BBI initiative with the 7-point agenda, which has no mention of constitutional amendment, that one is the handshake. And that the deputy president has spoken out and tweeted and spoken in public and said,
what he's done is what matters. It's of course he has say he supports. He's also said a lot of things as politicians do, which they don't mean, and they say for the sake of it and for the sake of diplomacy. But just look at the fact that he has been asked continuously, stop going around the country electioneering. He was even told the words tanga tanga came out of the president's mouth, and he embraced that, which to me is somewhat rebellious. It speaks volumes of that. If you're trying to say that no, they're very much together and there's no sort of factions within these two parties. I mean, everybody else must be completely crazy then, Eric, to see these divisions within the party. But he has continued on this electioneering mode. He has traversed the country, done Harambes, continued to raise his profile and speak of 2022, having been warned against it, having been told categorically and explicitly, stop this, let us focus on democracy. This is a gross violation of the Constitution. If you look at his role as a deputy president, it is to deputize. And then you look at the definition of deputize, it must be in keeping with what the president wants or with what the senior person wants if you're deputizing them.
Take a quick break and take a look at what's happening in the traffic. It's 27 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Looking good on Mombasa Road. Not so bad. Trying to get into the city centre. Coming off Thika Road also, the headache is reduced to at least manageable levels. All right. Langata Road was causing a bit of some palpitations this morning. And now trying to get onto Bagathi Way coming off Langata Road is not so terrible. It is still slow, but we can't call it a gridlock anymore. Thika Road seems to be behaving, or rather the people using the route seem to be behaving. So we're getting to the point whereby most people are getting into work or starting their businesses, and then so the traffic, the calls are not so terrible. It's a good day on the roads, I'd say. 0719012600, unless you want to prove me wrong by telling me where it's gridlocked. I'd be happy to know and spread the word.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
William Ruto should toe the line or resign. That's what MPs held a press conference at Parliament buildings yesterday and said that William Ruto is not going alongside what the party Jubilee is thinking and what the president is saying. And that's the same conversation that Jerry Thorne is raising this morning and saying, actually, if you look at the Constitution and the role of a deputy president, it's to deputize the president. There are grounds there for impeaching the deputy president.
Absolutely. If you then in turn look at the definition of deputize, it means that he actually cannot undermine his boss, which he has done on a number of different occasions. I think most significantly being that he fielded a candidate. Let's not forget that all this is in the backdrop or is underpinned by the fact that there's tribal and political considerations to take into account. People can't come out all guns blazing. They have to be sort of responsible leaders. These are two tribes that came together as a coalition in 2013. It's very easy to actually rupture into hatred if we're not careful in how sensitive this situation is handled. So they're being the politicians and the leaders that we do need in the country. But if you're discerning and you look at the political intrigues, you will understand that there is no doubt that Ruto is actually going against what the party leader wants. First of all, the handshake, we saw that. He's fighting the president's initiatives in the BBI. His allies have discredited Uhuru's administration over and over. Remember, these people have proxies, people who speak for them. For instance, with Ruto, Murkomen speaks volumes. Whenever Murkomen speaks, that's his mouthpiece. We've also had him actually blackmail state officers like the Interior, CS Matiang'i and PS Kibicho. Now, these are appointees of the president. These are the cabinet, the executive is appointed by the president. By the time you're undermining them or accusing them or blackmailing them, you are going against the president. So that in and of itself is actually a violation of the Constitution. Given the definitions, if we follow that.
How many CSs do we have in the country?
22. Are we at 22 or 23?
Yes, and yet every time the DP speaks about one, he focuses on just 2 or 3. It doesn't go beyond that. Why?
I think his insinuations would need the weight that the likes of Matiang'i have.
Every time the DP speaks, he focuses on two
when
or three.
he speaks adversely about a CS,
when he makes accusations and
Yes.
he points at somebody, I think he picks on Matiang'i. Of course, state security is shrouded with secrecy and sort of mystery, so it's very easy to make accusations that are hard to then follow through. To say they were in a hotel planning to kill me, it sort of does resonate with what state security
Eric, there's somewhere I'm
would
going
do.
with this discussion. You see remember we were talking about rhetoric the other day, and rhetoric and political utterances, they're more or less the same thing, okay? Now, if someone consistently says something and then again contradicts the very thing that they have said, now, and this is a politician, how do you interpret the utterances? For instance, at the beginning of this show, I said there's something that I've always found peculiar. Every time the DP speaks about politics, he has to bring in the former prime minister into that discussion. He'll call him tinge, he'll call him the older man. He'll find, and usually there's a derogatory twist to it, but he will bring him into the discussion. The latest one is that this man is against the BBI because the BBI is supposed to focus on peace, and this man is encouraging violence. So, those are utterances. That's rhetoric. And the purpose is clear: to get people to see an individual in a certain light and to take a certain perspective. Now, if this does not go against what was known to be the spirit of the handshake, then what is it? If you constantly attack the person who is supposed to be an equal partner in a handshake, this initiative to bring peace, and he's in a handshake with your president, and you're constantly attacking this person, you are attacking the initiative. So how then can you say that you are an able deputy?
What Ruto is relying on very heavily in order not to be sacked, impeached, because there are provisions for all of these in the Constitution, impeachment especially, of which I've just proved there's grounds considering there's been a violation of the Constitution. He's relying on very heavily on the political consequences, the fallout in terms of peace within, between the two communities. And this is what I say, the tribal ties actually tie us more deeply to the deputy president than the Constitution does. The Constitution gives provisions to get rid or sack the deputy president through impeachment, but because of the tribal ties, it then becomes an impossibility because of the sort of explosion of tensions. I was going to say violence, but that's alarmist, and we don't want to go down that alley. But I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Because of that, we're almost held ransom to his antics. Whatever he does, there's no repercussions because we all know it's unspoken. Underpinning this, there's an undertone of potential violence should anything happen, because these two communities have fought before. It's a very delicate piece. So what it does, it puts the Constitution to one side. It puts what Kenyans voted for to one side. So it's a very dangerous game. It's a very delicate game that must be played if you look at it politically, because of the dire consequences. We know the backlash we would have. We speak to Yegun regularly, and he says, no, you guys promised my guy being a DP, the Kalenjin, you promised him a turn at presidency, of which I'd like to state he has had. If you remember, there was a time constitutionally, it's important we note this, constitutionally the president left the country to attend a hearing at the ICC, and he didn't want to attend the hearing as a sitting president for historical purposes, legacy purposes, and he invoked, I think it's Article 134 or don't quote me on this, I'm trying to remember. He invoked an article that gives him the provision for the deputy to be acting president while he's away. For a week. So technically, he has had his chance at presidency.
He has had his 1 week.
But having said that, no. CT, you nod
see
your
the
head.
dishonesty that we have as a country.
No, that's fetching.
No. How is it fetching? Has Ruto been president of this country or not? As per the Constitution.
He has been acting president.
He has
Did
been
he have
president.
full
He
powers?
has-
No, he did not.
Well, that wasn't discussed in the, I'll pay you back 10 years, you 10 years, me.
We
But
know what
if
was
we,
implied.
if we look, technically Ruto has been president. But if we look at even the sort of negotiations that were made, 10 years Ruto, 10 years Uhuru, and so on, he's had his 10 years. And this is actually my claim, my belief in terms of the political promises and so on and rewards. He's had his 10 years as deputy, and a very powerful deputy at that in terms of the rewards he's had. He's been able to actually select members of the cabinet. He's had a lot of power. No deputy has ever been this powerful.
I think it's clear just from a lot of the sentiments that he has expressed, things that he has said. I think come directly from the fact that he feels that he has been shortchanged. Now, whether anybody told him that no, you're not going to be, or actually what we said is what we're not.
Shortchanged by who?
The agreement. No, I'm saying
this argument Jerry is putting forward is dishonest.
No, what I'm saying. Hold on.
Let me just suggesting I'm partaking in sophistry.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
A lot of what he says.
It's a dishonest argument.
Right. A lot of what he says comes from the fact that yes, he does feel that it was clear according to the agreement that he was going to get his 10 years as president of the country. And now with a lot that has happened, even over the last 2 weeks, and we kind of see how alliances have kind of shifted, different alignments have been made. It's kind of clear to everybody that they're not going to give him this position. They're not going to give him this.
What about the choice of the people? What about democracy? Why don't we let the people decide? Who is they? Why should people decide over democracy?
Not decide,
the electorate has a right.
No.
The electorate has a right.
This is the dishonesty I'm talking about. Because you're now arguing yourself out of a promise that you made. The utterances that followed, it was clear. Mimi miaka kumi.
Alafu Ruto akuja endele.
No, we didn't say alafu. Alafu. No, let's look at the phrasing of this.
Uhuru said it.
Uhuru said it. Alafu can be interpreted to mean as well as. Alafu can be interpreted to mean as well as. Ruto has had his 10 years as deputy and a very strong deputy at that.
Wacha mimi nikuje nimalize hizi makatano alafu Ruto akuja endele. That is what he said.
We'll find that clip.
In fact, I watched it a couple of days ago. My Swahili is a bit broken, but you understand what I'm trying to say.
He was speaking in Eldoret.
He said it.
Amma namnagani Eldoret.
But politicians will say anything on a podium. You've also heard Ruto make
and so politicians said whatever that it is that he was going to say, and Deputy Ruto took it to mean that I will have my place.
Ruto did not take it to mean I am not a Ruto supporter, and it was clear to me
what it
that
meant.
It was saying I will be president for 10 years, and then Ruto will be president for 10 years.
Finish.
That's what it was saying.
No, that's some confirmation bias, because that's what people would expect in a political partnership.
Apart from political fallout, in what other areas, and you're raising the issue of constitutionally, there are areas where the deputy president has actually gone against the constitution.
There's been a
and his
violation
constitutional
of
mandate,
which is a ground for impeachment.
Does the constitution actually envisage having a yes man for deputy president? Does it mean that if we disagree,
or no man?
A yes man, like in everything that you say.
It goes without saying that if you're a deputy, you are a yes man, in that you're going to actually not undermine your boss.
No.
If you look at the definition of deputy,
initially he was a yes man until I think he began to feel the bubblings
I
of this.
don't think he was ever a yes man.
He began to feel that things are not going to go according to the ways that if we're calling yes man deputy, he actually fulfilled his position as a deputy for some time. And then when he saw that things were not going to actually go according to the promise that he believed in, then he changed tack.
No. Let me open the phone lines. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Does it even make sense? Is it illogical? Is it fair to even ask the deputy president to step aside or to resign? Good morning. It's 8:45.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
It's 8:45. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're opening up the phone lines. Of course, you know the first caller on the line. Who is going to be? Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Eric.
How are you doing?
Karibu, Yegon.
Asante.
Hey.
Now, the things seems to be going harder for my deputy president.
Yes.
Because I was shocked to see Fatuma Gedi is among them. The 23 early MPs.
25.
So maybe someone is misadvising our deputy president. Because actually, as per the constitution, he should be supporting the president.
Absolutely.
But on the other side, also the president undermined him without talking to him by appointing C.S. Matiang'i as his deputy.
Who's deputy? Sorry, CS Matiang'i is who's deputy?
Chief Minister. When he starts running everything, he becomes a deputy.
Matiang'i is the current deputy for President Uhuru.
Because what do we want
And
in
then-
a deputy?
Because in the first term, we used to see Honorable Ruto chairing cabinet meetings, opening some government functions. But now, right now, at this time, the whole Agenda 4 plans is being chaired by CS Matiang'i. And these are the people who had agreed that we are going to deliver to Kenyans for the next 10 years when they came in power in 2013. So when the deputy president started by undermining the president, I think that is why President Uhuru is changing his tactics.
So who undermined who first?
So it was
The deputy president.
So it's clear that there was undermining that took place.
You know, there is no way in Nigeria you can attend the same function with the president and then start by outlining the developments in the region. What will you expect the president to say?
To talk about thereafter.
Vil-
We've even
To
seen him
just-
walk in front
to-
of the
to-
president. in
Vile William
Northeastern.
amesema ni kweli.
No, yes. So the only thing the president can say is that say William amesema ni ukweli and his press, his cards. You normally see him reading his cards.
Yeah.
But that should not be the way. So I think the president, because of this game of changing tactics, being betrayed, that is why Ruto was trying to outsmart his master earlier enough.
Right.
So,
And
Yegon.
what the master did, yes.
Let me just ask you this direct question. Should the deputy resign or not?
No, we should not resign.
We.
We.
Yes.
Thank you, Yegon.
Who is we, Yegon? Tell us.
We, the deputy president.
Jerry, I'm saying we, we minister, the supporters of the president,
We are not resigning.
who are hiring the seat in Camp 2022. There is no way you can resign.
Who are the supporters? Let's break this down, deconstruct it to the lowest, the simplest form.
Okay, let me just say this final note. The community of the president is under Sieka.
Of the president or the deputy president?
The deputy, not president.
But you have alternatives in
Is under
Gideon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yegon. 0719 012 600 0719 012 600. You know, I want to stick to the issues where it's about institutions and how institutions work.
That's all
and
well
how
and
they
good and
function.
very and very sort of aesthetic and diplomatic. But what we want to do on this show is actually
No, but do you know what Eric wanted to say?
undress.
Did you know what Eric wanted to say?
it's
Eric,
about-
you wanted
Sticking to the issues which
It's
been
about
spoke
it's about the
earlier.
institutions. So, for example, this particular party, the MPs who were speaking in Parliament yesterday, one of the things that they were raising was the Kibra by-election, and they were saying that the deputy president fielded a candidate. No, Jubilee Party, which some of them belong to, fielded a candidate. They campaigned against. So in fact, they should start by resigning and saying, you know what, we went against the party ideals, or they should demand that the National Governing Council of the party, which I think they are members, all elected members of parliament should be in, should sit. They should demand that they do that. They discuss it within their political party and discipline their deputy party leader. Ruto was not campaigning for Mariga as the deputy president. He was campaigning for Mariga as the deputy party leader of Jubilee. These are Jubilee bedroom politics.
You can say that.
As Jubilee.
Eric,
for a Jubilee candidate.
There's some fights that are not worth fighting. When you're the president and you're involved and engrossed in development as a president, you're not going to start fighting and having wrangles about an individual fielding a candidate. You will tell him that actually I'm not going to get involved. This goes against the sentiments and the spirit and the essence of the BBI, but you're not going to outright fight him. If he wants to use the party as the vehicle through which to field this candidate and show contempt for the handshake, which is what exactly happened, then you let him. But there's repercussions. You're going to have the equivalent, as Yegon said, of a deputy president in the name of Matiang'i. So this is how politics plays out. But I want to look at this word deputy and actually define it, because when we say what is Ruto's role as deputy, so a deputy, as per the dictionary, and this is the Oxford Dictionary, a person who's appointed to undertake the duties of a superior in the superior's absence. And if we look at some synonyms, there's a second in command, number 2, subordinate, junior, auxiliary, assistant, right-hand man, substitute, stand-in, understudy. So all these words, what they connote is you are below the president. You do not undermine the president. You emulate, you carry out his duties in an echoic system. You do what he wants.
You
that
go
is
around
crucial.
the country
Now,
and you
he
inspect
has been
the
doing,
projects.
no, he has not been doing that. He has been pretending under the guise of inspecting projects, of which Uhuru has not asked him to do.
He
but
has.
under the guise
He
of
has.
inspecting
that
projects,
Tanga
he's
statement that the
actually-
president made, he said, when this Kijana is going around the Tangatangaing around the country, give him this feedback.
Let's
I am
look at this
sending him
word
to you,
tanga
give him
tanga.
the feedback.
We all understand connotations.
Yes,
don't
we do.
Would you say a word like tanga tanga to your grandmother? Have you been tanga tangaing? What does that word connote? We all know it's one that is not a pleasant one. When Uhuru was saying kutanga tanga to,
you want to take
towards
us on a
Ruto-
semantic
The
journey.
president-
No. Let's
the
be honest.
president
Let's
could have-
understand what rhetoric
The president
is,
could
because
as well
it's a play
have
on
said,
words. These
Jerry,
are rhetorical
the
tools.
president could have said, wait for me when I come around the country, give me the feedback. Or when Matiang'i comes around the country, give him the feedback. He said, when William is going around the country, Tanga use.
Okay, you
fine.
tell me what
When
tanga tanga
and he
means.
said,
Would you use that
give
word
him
to
the
your
feedback.
grandmother?
I would use to somebody else, like my deputy. My grandmother is my senior.
Tanga is no, it's derogatory. The term itself doesn't give me a feel good. If you tell me I was tanga tangaing, it usually connotes an element of being a little bit loose and everywhere, and probably not following the rules and regulations.
No, it's not. It's aimless.
Aimless.
Loitering
With an element
without
of
intent.
aimlessness,
Yes.
but there is a journey. There is a traveling element.
But he said,
in
when
that.
he comes around the country, give him the feedback.
Loitering. What would be the English?
And make use of him. Give him
Why
the
don't we
feedback.
contextualize it? What was the context in which the president was saying these things? What had arisen prior to that? There was, remember again, this is against what background? It was a backdrop of people complaining. Before that, remember there was this huge bill that had appeared. The deputy president's journeys, trips.
Yep.
The president's trips had not come in.
No.
It was massive. Then there was the issue of political utterances and the things that people say. And there were complaints. This Tanga group and what, it wasn't there, but there were clear divisions that were being seen in central Kenya. So this was now the president making a speech about
what
that
was going
situation.
on.
And he said,
The direct context of this city.
No,
when the
you look
president
at
was
it
speaking,
as a
when
rhetorical
when the
device.
president was speaking here, he was actually telling people, because people were giving him feedback. It was actually an impromptu thing where the people were telling the president, these kind of projects have been started, these ones haven't been completed. And the president responded there by saying, when my deputy is going around the country, give him the feedback, then he'll bring it to me.
Tanga.
When he's tangaing around the country,
No.
give him the feedback and he will bring
Actually,
it to me.
that's what the president said.
So the deputy
Yes,
president,
the word
the next place the deputy president
there were
was,
several things
and
he
he
was
was there
trying
with the
to say
president,
in
was
that
in Meru,
statement.
and it was a national forum, and he said, Mr. President, you ordered me when I'm going around the country, I take feedback, and here is feedback that I've taken in Meru here because you asked me to do that, and that's what he's been doing.
One of Eric, you spoke of rhetoric yesterday. Rhetorical analysis dictates that you actually look at not just the meaning of words, but the aftermath and the consequences of that. Now, if we look at the president's statement as harmless, as you're suggesting, if we take it to have been harmless, look at what was subsequent or what was the resultant situation of that statement. We have two factions in Jubilee. You can suggest that they're imagined. We have MPs coming out and fighting. You can suggest that's also imagined.
You have
can
MPs supporting
suggest
the
the
opposition.
BBI. You can say that's imagined. We saw somebody field a candidate that goes against the spirit of what the handshake was about, because of course what you're doing there is agitating Raila in his backyard, and that's not what we were looking to gain from the handshake. That again you can say was imagined. But when you put all these things in place, if you understand politics and how it works, then you need to understand the rhetorical devices that are used by politicians to make certain statements. Tanga is a rhetorical device in this instance. When Uhuru was using it, there is a derogatory tone to it. There is an aimlessness tone to it. And he was
He
talking
even called
about
him this Uyu Kijana. He didn't even
Kijana
call him
William.
Right. It's not somebody he's speaking to with utmost
He's my
respect.
junior. He's my.
He's not saying everybody is the president's junior. Let's be honest. He doesn't speak to everybody like that.
Just like you're gonna say, where it comes like, we are equal. No, we are not. First of all, we are not equal. He's actually my junior. He's my deputy. And when he goes around the country, I have sent him. Give him feedback. He will bring it to me. He will not take action. He will bring it to me.
So debts have been paid. This is what one side says. Debts have been paid, and nothing is owed to the deputy president in terms of now sitting for office in after 2022 for the next 10 years, because he is basically hanging on to this promise that, look, I delivered. And according to my delivery, or the promise after my delivery, was that I would also sit in the seat of the presidency for 10 years in Kenya. And that's the promise that I was hanging on to. You could find that actually a lot of the behavior that he's been displaying recently was because clearly it's shown that this promise that was supposedly made is not going to be kept.
That's again fetching.
Really? It's
Yes,
clear.
it is.
But
It's
people have
fetching
said that he will not be given this seat. He won't. It's been clear.
People
It's been
have said.
They have said.
But the president hasn't.
Why I'm saying it is fetching is because you are arguing that certain things have happened that have made him believe it is unlikely he will get the support. And I'm saying, no, it's not necessarily that. It is the behavior that he himself may have exhibited. And this is what Njeri is trying to say, that may have brought about this situation that we're discussing here. Because if indeed you are supposed to be a deputy, there are certain things you're supposed to comply with.
There's a manner in which you're supposed to carry yourself.
Constitutionally,
that promise was pulled away.
Conventionally,
and the deputy
constitutionally,
hasn't done a good job of that. That's just the truth. He hasn't.
I was just reading something actually that somebody's written on Twitter. If I can find that, where are we? About the deputy president rather, and his conduct, and how obvious it has been that we needn't have these discussions. Where are we? If I can just scroll down there.
There.
Well, somebody says President Uhuru has failed as a party leader to play party politics, or maybe he has a scheme with the deputy president, ? Somebody here says, what is the party line? BBI is an agreement between the president and ODM party leader Raila Odinga. The DP is in order. Now, this is the one I like, because clearly this guy, in terms of his political understanding, is fantastic. He says it is a well-known fact that Ruto undermines Uhuru. He hasn't only said it, he does it. And noting the history of loyalty as exhibited by our second president, Ruto is dangerously ambitious and impatient. He started running a parallel government as soon as they were sworn in. Very interesting. A conspiracy, of course, but if these are the sentiments on the ground... well,
ground which is different. 0719-012-600. We're taking your calls on this. MPs yesterday sat in Parliament and said that the deputy president has been undermining the president. He's fighting the president's initiatives like the BBI. His allies are discrediting Uhuru's administration, and for those and many other reasons, the deputy president should resign as deputy president of the Republic of Kenya, because he is not doing what he's supposed to do. What do you think about this? Call us. Also comment on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Our hashtag Twitter is Spice FM KE, the Situation Room. It's 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
Okay, nothing much changed. It's getting a little easier applying the routes of Nairobi, seeing as they were somewhere mid-month, so we don't have as much vehicular traffic as we did. The last couple of days has been quite a mess because we had quite a number of vehicles trying to get into the city centre, but that all changes today, so not really bad. Thika Road is not exercising, or rather forcing people to exercise much patience today. Neither is Mombasa Road. It is flowing quite smoothly, and also realize we're coming to the end of the year where we won't see so much traffic on the road, so it's not so bad right now. Enjoy it while it lasts. If you see something that we should know about, don't hesitate to give us a call.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Jerry Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Should Deputy President William Ruto resign? MPs allied to the handshake side of Jubilee came out in Parliament yesterday. How many were there again, MPs? 25 MPs. And the claims against DP Ruto, he's undermining the boss. He's fighting the president's initiatives like the BBI. His allies are discrediting the president's administration. His allies are blackmailing state officers like Interior CS Matiang'i, that and many others. And that's the question we're asking.
His communications director, David Mugonyi, he last night came out and dismissed the claims, saying that Ruto was not undermining the president. He said the DP is focused on helping the president fulfill the promises in the Jubilee Manifesto, the Big Four agenda, and uniting the country. The DP does not have the time and energy to engage those preaching hate and promoting violence. So very interesting. He's got a lot of time to travel the country and push for politics. But this was completely denied, that he wasn't undermining the president.
Was he expected to say anything else, really?
I don't know. He could have actually come out as defiant. This is a moment we can see the party is disintegrating. Maybe it's time he came out and said, actually, I'm going to be the official opposition.
Doesn't the party have a structure that helps it resolve issues such as the one that we
should have? Good morning. This is Jeff. Jeff calling in from Mombasa. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
Salama kabisa.
Now, maybe there are two things I need to find out from you guys. I haven't seen today's paper. I was late for news yesterday. I want to know the composition of the MPs, the 25 MPs you're talking about. Were they from the same party? For example, Jubilee, was it 50-50 or is it 20-70? Because that one will tell us something, because it looks more of politics to me.
Yes, it was sort of bipartisan in terms of there was Makadara's George Aladwa, there's Kiambu Women Rep Muthoni Wamushomba. So it was bilateral. I don't have the list of the actual
Simba Arati is there.
Simba Arati, which
Rafael Wanjala of Budalangi.
ODM. Yeah.
Now,
Borabus Ben Momanyi.
No problem. Now let me ask a question here. Let me pose a question here. What does ODM has to do with the Jubilee? Because the deputy president is from the Jubilee party. And if it's internal affairs of Jubilee, where does ODM come in, especially the MPs? Where should they come in and tell us that...
this is actually a constitutional matter. It's not even a party politics we're talking about. There's been a gross violation of the Constitution in terms of the role...
specific actors
the role,
been violated?
Okay, if we look at the role of the deputy president... And that is put out. I can read you the provisions shortly. But if you look at the role, it is to deputize the president. If you then look at the definition of what deputize means, it doesn't include undermine. So in his undermining of the president through a number of initiatives.
For example, I agree with you. Can you give me probably 2 or 3 places where he has undermined the president, for example?
Okay. The first one was in his actions in fielding a candidate for Kibra. You can say it was through the party, but we did not see the endorsement from the president, and some things the president prefers not to fight. But it was clear the president did not endorse this candidate because it goes against the spirit of the handshake. Now, if this party, this presidency has decided that peace...
Just pause there. Pause there. There's something I want to bring up. When we had the same by-election, we had an election in Garissa Township. ODM fielded candidates, same as Jubilee. There, we cannot say that handshake was, or BBI was being interfered with. But now, because it's Kibera, it has been violated. Are we having 2 roles? Are we having 2 yardsticks of measuring the same thing.
Right, and actually ODM won those seats. There were MCA seats and ODM won them. But what you have to understand
here... They reclaimed
them.
You're
clearly tanga-tanga at the moment, but in due course, obviously that shall change once you start to see the light and understand.
No, I am not.
Jeff
let me tell you something.
Jeff is
I'm a level-headed person.
Yes.
I'm a level-headed person who would go either way, so long as you persuade me, but persuade me with facts.
Yes, we're coming to the facts. We have to understand what Kibra means for Raila, how important it is, and it has national significance. And we saw that. We didn't see Anne Waigoro and Kivutha Kibwana, Charity Ngilu go and campaign in Garissa for the MCA. And we lost the seat as Jubilee. We lost it to ODM, and it remained peaceful. But we have to understand the context here and what Kibra means as a statement, as a political statement. The undercurrents there, you can't ignore them.
I agree. We had a by-election in Embakasi, you remember?
Yep.
What happened to Jubilee? They decided to let it go, isn't it? And support the Wiper.
Yep.
By then, Jubilee was not bad. But now, because they decided to field a candidate in Kibra, their own candidate, then they become bad. I mean, what is the yardstick here?
Kibra, remember, Kibra, you're also going against Raila. Remember, the handshake, it's got a lot to do with bringing Raila into the fold and the subsequent peace and cohesion that we've seen in the country.
To actually ensure that we have such playing fields.
We have a level playing field
for politics and more political tolerance, yes.
And this was the best place to actually show that the handshake works.
No.
Maybe this is something I want to bring up here. Was the handshake supposed to bring us to a level where we now have to agree that this is the person who is going to win, or you are going to field this candidate, and democracy is going to be sold at the altar of handshake?
If we're going to talk, we have to do things within one framework. We can decide to do things completely democratically and stick by the law, or we can understand our nuances and idiosyncrasies as Kenyans and our politics and how we do it. If we're going to do things democratically, then let's not talk about 10 years mine and 10 years yours. We can't do things in the Kenyan way with a Kenyan understanding when it comes to Ruto, and then when it comes to the president, we then talk about democracy and proper structures and pillars and so on.
Then let me tell you where the 10 years yours and 10 years mine came. Do we know what agreement was done between TNA and URP? Do we know? Are we privy to that conversation?
No, we're not.
We are not. Are we privy of the conversation of what brought up Jubilee?
No.
We are not. And so what we are just doing, we are speculating.
Well, that's what politics is.
Not only are we speculating, we are also trying to bring out our supporters and interpret and help us so that we solidify what we believe would be true.
But actually, the speculation isn't in a vacuum. Politicians are doing what politicians
normally do,
and instead of just speaking, they also act. So we read their actions and we read what they say, and we combine the two. So it isn't just absolute theoretical speculation.
I was taking him through instances where the DP has actually undermined his boss, the president.
And
I gave you the example of Kibra. You can deny that, but as far as politics goes and it's our understanding of politics, we all know what went on there. He was actually fighting the sentiments of the handshake.
The president and the deputy president were there with a candidate. You know that one? By the way, we can't really gloss over that one, surely.
But a question was asked and Jerry's trying to respond to it. Yes.
Secondly, the DP is fighting the president's initiatives, including the BBI. That has been very obvious. Now, if this is the president's initiative to bring peace to the country, and this is the structure, this is the framework he's chosen to use, this is the instrument he's chosen to use, the BBI, which might bring about a referendum. If you listen to Ruto's utterances, they speak against this. Now, Ruto has followers in the countries who won't want this. So if you're part of a party, if you're part of an agreement, if you're a deputy, you do not go against the initiatives of the president. It is a violation of the constitution, given what your role as a deputy president is. Now, we understand our Kenyan politics. We understand there's certain nuances that we have to take into account, which is political ties, political coalitions and agreements. And I think Ruto is relying very heavily on this and actually exploiting it to do exactly as he pleases, because he knows the eruption that any sacking, any impeachment of himself could bring. He knows how dangerous and how volatile and how fragile and delicate this has to be handled.
Some of his
And
supporters
he's
could
taking
also
advantage
argue
of
that this whole rhetoric that's actually being planted is being planted so that we can negate what was a gentleman's agreement between the two
What was the gentleman's agreement? Let's hear it.
Let's hear what he said when the president was campaigning in 2017 in Eldoret.
Saa 2 asubuhi mtakuwa mmepiga kura. Kitendawili saa 3 awe anaenda nyumbani. Tumekubaliana Eldoret? Eldoret tumekubaliana. Tumalize hii miaka 5 jameni, mimi niende nipumzike, Ruto ashikilia asukume huko mbele, dunia hiyo iendelee. Hao ni namna gani jameni? Hao ni namna gani jameni? Bye bye.
That's it. I
So
finished
tumalize
mine.
hii miaka mitano. Let's deconstruct this actually and actually analyze it. Let's
spin.
do that.
No, let us
Let's
spin it.
let's try and understand this for what it could be, how it could be interpreted. Let's completely deconstruct it. Nimalize hii miaka yangu
Let's start
tano.
with the obvious one before we start going deeper. So nimalize hii miaka 5.
Meaning
niende
5 years have
nipumzike.
gone by.
Yes.
I have 5 more
Give
years
me
to
the
go.
5 more
Yes.
years.
Okay,
I
fine.
finish, nimalize, niende nikapumzike, Ruto ashikilie hapo pengine aendelee.
What can that possibly
means
mean?
what? One after the other.
Hold on. I thought
Not
he said
concurrent.
he says nimalize hii miaka 5.
Niende nikapumzike.
Niende nikapumzike.
Ruto ashikilie hapo mbele aendelee.
What can that possibly
So
mean?
Ruto continues being deputy. That is what he's talking about. This is his second term.
Remember,
kushikilia
now,
is deputizing.
this is dishonest.
It's not.
It's dishonesty.
Ashikilia aendelee.
And
And don't
Ashikilia
forget,
is not
Ruto has been
deputizing,
president of this country at some point.
Again,
Ruto
further,
has,
now this is
also,
a spin on
and
the dishonesty.
furthermore, why are we treating our electorate this way? Why are we enforcing leaders? Why are we shoving leaders down their throat? Let the people decide.
The people will decide.
Let
the thing
people,
is, who are we going to campaign for?
Who is we?
It's the same thing.
Who is
We, the people who are in that ground.
Who they
All
could
those-
change
the
their
hundreds-
minds.
the
Different
hundreds
people
of
could
people.
change their minds,
And that's it.
And we're seeing that.
Because
We're
all
seeing
of them
people
were
in
wearing-
the Jubilee
all of
camp
them were wearing
actually
Jubilee
against.
t-shirts at
Yes,
that-
but you're
at
seeing
that
people in
rally.
the Jubilee
So
camp
at-
who are voters themselves. They might be MPs, but they're also voters, and you're seeing them turn against Ruto because of Ruto's behavior. He will not toe the party line. He's undermined the president. He's not understanding his role as per the constitution, hence violating the constitution. Now, maybe people have changed their mind. This is not what we want. We've seen this behavior and we don't like it. And in a democracy or in life, you're allowed to change your mind.
So then they pull the promise.
Actually,
So are you agreeing that
if
there was a
someone
promise?
says they've
This
changed
promise,
their
how can you
mind,
force people to? How can you force people to vote for somebody?
if you
Ruto has
say-
shown his cards. He's shown his aggression and hunger for power. Maybe people are put off.
if
They're
the
like, hey, hold
argument,
on a minute.
if the argument is a change of mind, that's an honest discussion. Meaning, we said we'll do this, but we've changed our mind.
minds.
That's an
No,
honest
no, no,
discussion.
no,
but trying to spin it that that was not the case.
No, there's
no.
lots. This thing is, it's not sort of a flat discussion.
It is.
It's 5-6 dimensional. It's very dynamic. There's a lot of perspectives to this. What I'm saying is, first of all, what we're suggesting here is that we can force the electorate to act a certain way or to vote a certain way.
We can't.
Nobody can force the electorate what to do. So what Eric was putting
Even
forward
what the
is that
president
no.
was doing in that
asking
campaign
for an
rally,
agreement.
He was
are you
he
making
was
a blanket
campaigning.
statement, or are you saying the
What the
electorate
president
in
was
Kenya
doing there
cannot
was
be forced?
campaigning.
A blanket
and saying-
statement and the electorate in
and
Kenya
saying,
cannot be
we
forced
are
to vote
here
a
as
certain
a
way.
joint
Can't be
ticket.
forced.
The electorate cannot be forced to vote a certain way. You've
Oh
seen.
yes, they can.
Let's go to Eldoret. Ronald, good morning.
Good morning, Eric, and good morning, panel.
Good
morning.
Good morning.
I understand Jerry is holding brief for BBI today in studio.
Good Lord.
The handshake gang.
Yeah. If it wasn't for the understanding that she's learned, I would really be...
Ruto, Ronald, please. Please switch off your radio because
Freudian slip.
I have.
All
my,
right.
my radio is off. I'm actually off the road.
good. Tuendelee.
Two things. I hope she is as sensitive and as delicate as she alludes to in terms of attending to issues, politics within the country.
Mm-hmm.
It is funny that she's talking about sensitivity and the delicacy of ethnic feelings within the political arena. but she does not see anything wrong in someone like Jeanette and the fellow was talking of the Jibwa
he's called Sifuna. Edwin Sifuna.
Chakike in sorry for the flowery language. It does not go down well with us.
What do you say? What do you say of what the handshake gang is saying?
The us I'm talking about is me and you guys within the studio. Not, I don't hold brief for Tanga or the other. My good friend, His Excellency the Deputy.
That we are yet to determine, sir. That we are yet to determine.
Yeah, you will determine this in a very, very short while.
Yes.
Two things. The question of him resigning or not is a non-issue. It is common parlance. It's common. It's something accepted within our political spectrum that you can do anything that so long as no one holds you to account.
Right.
So the illusion that is antagonizing or insubordinating the presidency is very scary. Are you alluding that the president is a neophyte? He has no spine. He has no access to a political argument on his own. He cannot call his deputy.
We now know who you're holding brief for, just by virtue of the spin that you're putting there. But no, I'm not alluding to that. What I'm saying is there's structures in place. There's ways of doing things. There's ways of doing things which the president has tried to do. There's a constitution which gives the role of the deputy, and the president has left it to the constitution. He doesn't need to fight his deputy. He doesn't need to say anything. He doesn't need to flex any political muscle.
The AG and the Solicitor General are asleep on their job. They are not advising the president appropriately about what his erstwhile deputy Jerry is doing.
But you see, Mr. Rono, this issue is a bit mixed because there's the issue of the government, the executive, and then there are party issues, okay?
My point, City, is
yes,
by allowing what is going on within the country,
yes,
we are actually fueling a degeneration.
How?
We are risking disorder.
How?
You should be able to call someone to order whether he is your deputy or not.
So he's been out of order.
If Ronald today did something silly and offended the law, it does not make sense to claim that since he is so popular in his village, we can't send police for him.
The law should apply.
The law should apply.
But the law also takes all circumstances into account. So the law doesn't work in situ. The law works in context. So as Kenyans, we must understand our context. And if the law can lead... If the law can lead to something that is deplorable, if the law can lead to violence, then we must look at the law and apply it in context and take all circumstances into account. Now, Kenyan circumstances, they're very intricate, but most of us understand these intricacies and these intrigues. So we know when to apply the law. We know how to go about things. We know when to turn a blind eye.
And you know when to turn a blind eye.
Now you said something that I didn't think Jeanette's comments or not Simbarati, Sifuna's comments, that I wasn't offended by them. Just because I didn't express my disgust or disdain as those comments, it doesn't mean that I wasn't offended. Today we're discussing the deputy president. I didn't feel their comments were material enough, or rather maybe I didn't want to amplify them by talking about them on radio. So I have been sensitive. I wanted to look at this purely from a constitutional framework perspective. That way there's no bias as to whether there's a gross violation of the Constitution by the deputy president and therefore grounds to impeach.
Context, my dear, context. You are talking about him fielding a candidate.
Brought in context and political ties and repercussions, tribal repercussions even. I brought those in.
Mr. Rono, there's something I think you're trying to say, and maybe we're not giving you time to say it. Please say it. I want to understand what you're trying to say.
I'm simply saying we cannot allow what is happening to go on obtaining indefinitely.
Yes.
We might have to do a political research in the country where we are able to call to order even the president himself if he does something wrong.
Yes.
Absolutely. As we are right now, we are entertaining anarchy.
So we need a parliamentary system where you can have a vote of no confidence and actually call
it does not matter whether it's parliamentary, where you be condoning the Prime Minister's misadventures. We need to be able to call our leaders to order, irrespective of their rank.
But there's something I'd like to simply ask. You know, there's been allusion, you alluded to the president perhaps being weak. When if you have a situation where you have a president who's considerate and seems to be gentlemanly about the way he goes about things, should that be mistaken for weakness, really?
Let me bring in something fairly light for you, but which has quite some repercussions.
Yes.
The former CS Treasury, Rotich,
yes,
has worked with His Excellency Uhuru for so long. Actually, he was more like his second skin. Where is he now?
I don't know.
He has a court case.
He has a court case.
Yes.
Yes, and if he was if he was strong enough to shed off someone like that who has so much about you, you know, when you are working in such a sensitive office as the Treasury, most of the decisions, actually 100% of the decisions are carried by the president, are made by the president.
Yes.
On your advice.
Yes.
So what does that tell you?
I'm actually in agreement, and I like your example. I was merely saying that sometimes
that the president is allowing his deputy to do what his deputy is doing because it dovetails very well into a political scheme. We don't know what the political scheme. I can't speak for him, but that would be my take.
They're working in cahoots.
Okay.
Rono.
Excellent point, Mr. Rono. Thank you.
Asante sana for your point this morning. 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. The grounds for impeaching a deputy president, they're there. So there's on the ground of gross violation of a provision of the Constitution or any other law, which is what you're saying. You could argue on that. Where there are serious reasons to believe that the deputy president has committed a crime under a national or international law or for gross misconduct. Now, if 25 of them can come together and actually claim this, can they marshal up the numbers and go ahead and impeach the deputy president?
In terms of procedure,
which is what they should just do instead of coming to tell us.
In terms of procedure. No, what they're also suggesting is to amend the Constitution to give the president powers to sack his deputy in case he turns rogue. Sorry. Excuse me. In case he turns rogue mid-term. So they're agitating for that to be an amendment perhaps in the Constitution. What I was suggesting is that actually there's enough laws and provisions in place to impeach, but of course they come with their barriers and bottlenecks, given that our politics as we understand it, there's tribal intrigues, there's coalitions, understandings, agreements, promises and so on that actually hold us together. So are we being held ransom to peace? And we're not following the Constitution. There's a lot of intrigues here that can be discussed, but in terms of undermining the president, there's been a lot of that. We've seen that, the BBI initiative, of course the handshake, and we've seen actions that prove that, fielding a candidate in Kibra and so on, accusing Matiang'i. This is the president's cabinet. This is the executive. Your job is to deputize.
Everything is logical except that fielding the candidate in Kibra.
That one does not work for me at all.
No, I also don't buy it. It was a Jubilee candidate.
Yes.
Yes.
And the Jubilee structures went ahead and identified this particular candidate, and the Jubilee structures.
I think the Jubilee structures were already divided internally. We know there had been some talk of a divorce or disquiet within the party. So I think some structures within the party went for it.
So let those that are disquiet leave the party. And look, because there's that provision for that. Let me pick this call. George is calling in from Mombasa. Good morning, George.
Morning to you, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning, sir.
Yeah, my point is simple. That a deputy the world over is supposed to be a confidant and should never be seen as a competitor.
Right.
So the moment DP Ruto started behaving as if he's a competitor or an equal to President Uhuru, that is the moment he lost it all.
Absolutely. He didn't live up to his end of the bargain. He didn't live up to his role constitutionally. Yeah. So there was a lot there. You can understand why the 2022 promise isn't coming to fruition as he would have expected. Somebody here has written the true principles shared executive. It's an open secret. This was another Nusum Kate government, but with more decorum than its predecessor. Sadly, after 2017, Ruto went on attack for 2022 without consulting his boss and the party. So
again, speculation.
Well, that's what politics is. Yes, but it's informed speculation. You watch what happens. You watch the terrain, the political terrain. You look at the rallies. You look at the utterances, the rhetoric. And if you've been in politics long enough, you can tell exactly what's happening.
Very many long comments on Facebook. This conversation is happening thick and fast. Dominic Jerry, a few things. Uhuru is a party leader, but does he enjoy or have absolute or dictatorial authorities on its members? Did Uhuru have this handshake thing discussed, accepted and ratified by Jubilee Party organs and members? This thing that has been born by the handshake called BBI, is it Jubilee Party idea or a member that is Uhuru's pet idea? True, Ruto is a deputy president, but Jerry, you are assuming that he's a deputy of an organization and not a political establishment. Secondly, the current presidency was a result of a negotiated memorandum by Uhuru and Ruto that the duo sold to Kenyans, and the majority of voters agreed with them.
When the Constitution gives us, sets out the role of the deputy, they're not talking about the deputy of an organization such as Standard Media Group. They are talking about the deputy of the country, i.e. the deputy president, in this case the DP Ruto. So I was actually referring to the Constitution of Kenya and his role, which is set out very clearly in the Constitution.
George Nakamba says the only thing that is keeping the real Ruto on a leash is the Mount Kenya voting bloc. Otherwise, the real Ruto would have come out by now, and many would not have liked it.
Come out in what sense?
He can explain. George Nakamba, what do you mean by come out?
Exploded.
Come out. Jeffrey Kibos, we're in a democratic state. The said MPs are from ODM or one man's word, where one man's word is final. Overseer Gachima, why should he? He's in the public service as an elected leader and politics can't lack. Why should he resign? The Tanga wing of government has become the opposition within. They should quit to become the official opposition.
Absolutely.
That's Robert Kipkemboi.
Absolutely. He's attacking the Minister of Interior. Now, who does that with the most important minister in your executive? It's... if you're talking about undermining the presidency, I don't know what more else. The writing is crystal clear on the wall. There's no doubt.
Let me read a final one from Joseph Kimani. We need a DP who speaks his mind, not Uhuru's sycophant. Furthermore, he was elected by Kenyans, not Uhuru. So I'm behind. Not who can't tell the president.
Very contentious.
The person who can't tell the president
speaks his mind.
Naked.
The DP is not the opposition. He can join or he can become the opposition, and he's certainly behaving like he's the opposition in terms of his accusations for PS Kipicho and CS Matiang'i.
The way politics works is if you differ so fundamentally with your boss in politics, form your own party.
You ostracize. In fact, you ostracize yourself.
And if he has the support that he purports to have,
yes,
there should be no problem.
Look,
and you know what I'm maintaining?
But you cannot frustrate the presidency.
The deputy president has not differed with the president.
There's
a lot of interpretation.
I don't know what rock you've been
somebody
under.
who was politically blind. Somebody politically blind to be able to tell that he obviously
only
has.
25 of over 300 MPs came out to speak about this in
Those
Parliament.
are the ones who came out to speak.
Yeah.
You cannot tell what others are
They
feeling.
don't need more than 25.
It doesn't mean how many others
Eric has opened his own Pandora's box. When have we had
Pandora
even
has come
200
out.
MPs coming up to speak about something?
about anything.
It never
Right.
is. It's 10,
Which means
15,
this
20.
It's a representation.
But 25 is many.
This impeachment talk is just political rhetoric and hot
Yes.
air by politicians who
Eric,
know
it is.
that what they're doing is they're trying to fight somebody who they want to oppose come 2022.
Eric, it is
That's
political rhetoric. No one is arguing about it. We're talking about politicians and we're talking about how they go about their business. So of course it's rhetoric, and of course we understand the 2022 is in the picture. We understand this, but the truth of the matter is there are certain rules by which politics is governed. If you differ with someone, we've seen it in this country. The first vice president, Raila Odinga's father, differed with Kenyatta. He formed his own party.
Absolutely.
Okay? Raila himself has differed with other political establishments before. He's gone and formed his own party.
And coalitions.
Yes, form your own party if you differ.
Or you get the leader out of the party.
Shabi, you
that
said you
is
have strength.
also allowed.
Form your own.
No, that's also allowed. Maybe you have strength
The
within this
leader
party.
of the party in this case is the president.
Yes, and he
That
can
would
be removed.
treason.
He
No,
can be
that's-
removed from the
that-
leader of that party.
That would be treason, which
It's
I mean,
not.
he can try.
No way.
If it's party politics, it's not. If you try to remove him from the presidency,
But remember,
it's
this is
treason,
not a
yes.
parliamentary system where it's the head of the party that is.
Yeah, so we can
This is a
remove-
presidential system. We voted for Uhuru. Unless you
Yeah.
follow the impeachment process, which is very different, you cannot have
we
a vote
can
of no
remove
confidence
Uhuru
through
from being the
MPs.
leader of the party. Uhuru does not have to be leader of the party.
Absolutely, but
to
he
be
remains the president. Okay, but he remains the president. Now, we're not talking about kicking. Listen to what these MPs are saying.
Let's take a look at traffic.
Okay.
Okay.
Traffic.
Mombasa Road agrees this morning. It could always be this way, is what is coming out from a lot of people. But getting into the city centre has not been much of a headache for people today. So good news all around. Nothing terrible per se today. And you've got where you're going in good time. Let's see what the rest of the day pans out to look like and how the week will end. Remember that some roads have construction taking place. But other than that, it's been an easy morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Okay, before we went into that break, he was suggesting, Uhuru not being the party leader or quitting as the party leader. Remember, this handshake gang, or these MPs that are asking for DP Ruto to quit, they're asking for him to quit as a deputy president of the country. This, you can say, yes, there's party structures around it and so on, but when you look at the presidency, it's something very different from the party. That's why in a parliamentary system, you'd have a lot more powers. The MPs can actually do votes of no confidence and so on. But as things stand, we voted for the president. Also, of course, given the nature of our constitution, juxtaposed against the sort of context of our tribal differences or ethnic diversity, should I say, we also had an understanding that we're also voting Ruto in. But of course, we voted for the president. It comes as a presidency. Ruto was not on that ballot box. So he is actually Uhuru's deputy. He was not voted in by anybody. If we're going to start translating this literally, I've got a quote here from Aidan Dwale, who of course should know better, given I assume, he's a lawyer or he's involved in legislation. He says, the DP is the deputy party leader of the ruling Jubilee Party and his office is guaranteed in the Constitution. Actually, his office is guaranteed in the Constitution, yes, but also constitutionally as the deputy president, which is what these MPs are talking about. They're not talking about as the party leader, as deputy party leader. They're talking about deputy president and the powers of a president to actually sack his deputy president midterm in case he becomes rogue. I'm suggesting that even as things stand, we don't need those extra powers. Of course, it would make things a lot easier, but we don't need those extra powers because constitutionally it's provided for. You can impeach the deputy president if he has violated the constitution, if there's grounds, of which we have found in this case, given that he's going against his role, so there's been a violation there. But of course, we have to take a lot of other things into consideration, such as sort of the politics of the day and the country and the multi-ethnic democracy that we are as a country, the diversity.
Everything that has been said in this particular instance is open to other interpretations. That actually is the truth. Because you could actually argue that simply, if it is true that the deputy president has actually gone against his boss, the president, shouldn't some other organ of government have pointed this out already? Because there are people whose job it is to ensure that
the presidency is a unit.
And somebody asked that, the Solicitor General or the AG, who, they're legal advisors to the president, and maybe they have. And so the president knows how to deal with it. They weren't advising us when they were advising that there's been a breach or rather a violation of the constitution by the deputy.
The president understands what's going on.
Absolutely.
And that there's a bigger game here that we understand.
Right, also the political intrigue. To ask yourself again, the political intrigues, does he then have a problem problem with it, or is it part of something even grander that's playing out that is, beyond what the eye can see at this moment? Are we maybe seeing something different?
There is no division
Change is
between
coming.
the two
Change is
gentlemen.
coming.
If there is something so terrible that's happening that the president is feeling,
what if this handshake is the ruse, and the person who is actually being played is the former prime minister?
His former prime minister.
What if?
What if it's a possibility? There's been some backlash from the handshake. It's actually divided quite a bit of Central. We've discussed before the difficulty and the Herculean task that it is to actually sell Raila to Central, having sold him as the boogeyman for, I think, the last 4 elections in Central, in terms of threat to enterprise.
Forever. It isn't
as the threat to enterprise. No, as the threat to enterprise, which is very close to the hearts and minds of the people of Central.
Not enterprise, livelihood.
And the way it's packaged, of course, to resonate with the way it's packaged is to resonate with the hearts and minds of the people of Central, and it's packaged as threat to enterprise.
It's not too far-fetched, and it's not too far-fetched an opinion or a foresight, because just what we saw the last 2 weeks. Who would have thunk it that you would have seen whereby you had blatant kind of side shifting when it came to the Kibra elections in support of the opposition candidate. You never thought that you would see something like that play out in Kenyan politics.
Actually,
so even what you're saying now,
they didn't toe the
actually,
party
even what you're saying now is not. I mean, it sounds like something that would be. Oh my goodness! How would you lead along for 12 months? It's something that could actually come into play.
Let me bring in a caller.
Yes,
Roderick. Good morning.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Roderick.
How is everyone?
Very well.
Okay, this suggestion that people are putting up on here that Ruto and Uhuru are playing Baba, I think that one is terrible, because the real test is coming in 2020, whereby it will decide who will win the 2022 elections, and it might see even Ruto resigning from government, because I don't think Ruto will be in the same party as Jubilee trying to campaign for the BBI that he's opposing. Okay, and also one thing, there is this issue whereby Ruto and the derogatory term of Tanga. That term, Uhuru and Ruto are from the same age set, and when you call somebody else Kijana and he's from the age set, ukiona Kijana na Tanga hapa, that is madharau, and these guys are at a point of no return, and that happened at Kasarani during the Wakorino meeting. Remember that Okorino meeting that was happening in Kasarani? That was the no point of return. When Uhuru Kenyatta was speaking in Kikuyu. And he was a very angry man at that time. And since that time, how many people around Ruto have fallen? Waititu, the Ndidi Nyoros of this world. Those guys are crying on the sidelines right now.
Ishungwa soon.
Ishungwa very soon.
Aisha Jumwa,
and there she is. And I'm telling you, it's going to be a brutal battle come 2020. And I blame Ruto for everything that is happening politically in this nation right now.
Right.
Why?
Okay. Why?
Because the guy put this country in an electioneering mood.
Perpetual one.
The perpetual one. It's an electioneering mood since when they took over from the 2017 election. Uhuru has been saying all the time, let's work, let's stop politicking, but no one wanted to listen to him, and that is insubordination.
Absolutely.
If there was a way to throw him out, if there's a way to throw him out, he would have done it. But this forced marriage has to be there till death do them part or whatever. Yeah. Yeah,
they need for the kids.
Or part us, do us death in this in this situation.
They need for the kids.
They're saying for the children.
Lazarus, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Eric.
Good morning. Welcome to the Situation Room.
The panel.
Hi.
Hello. Hi.
I think the 25 MPs are just doing some political hyping. For the BBI, which I think is somewhere around the corner. If you look at the formation of the MPs that were speaking yesterday, there's a plan to hype the political temperature for the BBI to come in
and cool things down.
Yeah, there's something they're preparing a way for, like John the Baptist preparing a way for something that is coming.
Mm.
And to those who are saying that the Ruto and Uhuru are planning to play Raila, can you look at the casualties that how many people have suffered through this time? It's who have gone through the system. People like ITP, ED or T.
It's a lot of collateral just to play Raila.
How have all these people have been have suffered to play Raila? Is it possible?
It's a lot of collateral, unnecessary.
Monetization, I think it was targeting someone. Was it only to play Raila?
Rotich, good morning.
Morning to you, Eric.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Thank you.
How is
are you
Mombasa?
Good, thank you.
Mombasa, the rains have subsided. It's dry today.
Okay.
Yeah. No more flooding and all that.
All
now,
right. Yes.
Concerning this situation, what is happening in our country right now is, as somebody has just put it across a few minutes ago, it's that the country was put on an electioneering mood right after the previous general election. And that is when we got it all wrong. You see, the moment the country is put on such a momentum for another 5 years, most of the development agendas will be put on hold. Most of the guys will be working towards securing their positions come 2020, either to retain them or to maybe elevate to another level, like maybe a senator eyeing a gubernatorial position, an MP eyeing the same gubernatorial position and such. And the electorate, we allowed this because we keep cheering these guys. When they come to talk to us, we just give them audience and we just keep inviting them to talk to us about all these things. At very few occasions would somebody with a given community, or rather a gathering, would want to hear issues of development. They would want to hear about someone insulting person A, politician X insulting mudslinging politician Z, and all that. And what we need as a country, or rather as an electorate, is to deviate from that.
From the politicking.
From the politicking. You see right now, was it Ndu or was it Eric who had said that he had talked of something to do with Ruto and the issue of him having a huge voting bloc, that he hasn't come out his true colors. And I would side with him and say yes. You see, he has a lot of political backing from across Rift Valley, from across Central, and some other regions like Coast. It's just,
are these real or perceived?
Rotich is in Mombasa.
Sorry?
Mombasa is Joho, it's Raila. There's no question about
Rotich is a supporter of Ruto.
We've seen what happened to
No. It doesn't go with my name.
No.
Because I'm Rotich.
That is very true, sir.
I thought that's what you had said. That
that is very true, sir.
No,
and have you listened to our discussion about the perceived support in Rift Valley, the purported support in Rift Valley, and it might not be as strong as is purported. There's opponents. Remember, there's Isaac Ruto there. We saw some resistance from Mandago and the support Mandago has, of course. We know, of course, Gideon has a lot of support in that area, considering his father, and people still go to Moi up to this day for blessings or endorsement. So that's very telling as well. And he wasn't allowed into the Kabarak compound, if we remember that. That's very telling. So perhaps a lot of this is perception.
Yeah, to some extent you are right that most of these upcoming politicians who are still there can be going to Kabarak for blessings and what have you. But remember, as Moi's light in the political limelight has faded over time, or rather dimmed, then to an extent, these politicians will be trying to get to someone else who would give them this political backing, financial backing, and all that, and rather blessings for somebody to just endorse them for a certain race or a position in a certain race. And most of them are aligning themselves towards Ruto.
How do we know
remember,
that?
As you can see, given in examples were well exhibited when it was when the previous general elections were conducted. Most people would have wanted Ruto to just back them or just endorse them. But Ruto, to some extent, will be dodgy about it because would not want maybe two parties to collide and they look favorable in a certain race.
We had people actually running independent of Ruto that won, where Ruto's party didn't win in his backyard. We also had resistance, if you remember him trying to enforce Buzeki in Wasungishu. We had a lot of resistance from that. So this is people speaking back to him. So I think at a local level, they're very independent. Nationally, they would have voted for him. It's their guy and their only guy. But when presented with options, perhaps people could look another way. Basically, I don't think he has the support he purports to have.
No, yes, he doesn't lead. I won't say that he leads the Greater Rift Valley 100% or that, but to some large extent it does. But what the beauty of our electorate currently is they are knowledgeable and well enlightened,
and they know what they want.
They know what they want. They would interrogate issues. If we would want certain roads done, we want certain hospitals set up, we would want our clinics to have doctors.
Our maize boat, which he let down a lot of people.
Yes, maize boat, milk boat, and all that. Fertilizers prices are subsidized.
Less national debts.
They will some are national issues, but they would remember. But my point is, they would interrogate those issues and align themselves to those individuals. If he's coming from if he's an independent candidate, they would just back him up. If he's from a certain party, they would do that. And that is where, as an electorate, we need to head to. We shouldn't be voting parties.
We should be voting for
people
ideas.
or tribe.
Thank you very much.
People or tribe. Thanks for your time, Eric.
Thank you. Have a good day. Phone lines are open 0719 012 600 at 0719 012 600. Good morning, 12 to 10.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
I don't know who's tweeting on Ruto's handle these days, but it's gone a bit ballistic recently. He's responding to the Standard's headlines whereby there's the handshake MPs who are asking Ruto to quit. And he says, where Shimiwa, the real saboteur is your master, the people's con man who uses deceit to divide, destroy parties, even Uhuru's Jubilee, the master of chaos who factors violence in election equations, the one who never accepts defeat, will stand with Uhuru and Jubilee against such dictators. So, of course, there he's referring to Raila. Now, if this isn't yet another exhibition of insubordination, I don't know what is. I'm assuming it's somebody like Itumbi who would have been tweeting on behalf of Ruto, but clearly it's a reflection of Ruto's sentiments. If you're going to keep hitting at the person that your boss is trying to reconcile with and build bridges across different communities to bring about peace and ensure that we don't have the divisive politics that we have had over years, which I think, in my opinion, will actually be what is Uhuru's legacy. If you keep going against that, surely you have turned rogue midterm. But the thing is with the with Ruto, it wasn't even midterm. This idea of the perpetual electioneering and, traversing the country, raising money for churches, and it was political statements, whether it was funerals and so on, and garnering as much support as you can, and penetrating and gaining traction in Central, getting MPs to come to your Karen residence, get money, and then go and sort of amplify your messages within their communities. That is electioneering. You can call it going around looking at projects and reporting back to the master. But anybody who understands politics or elections, there's nothing else other than the branding or the T-shirts. That is electioneering.
I have a question I'll come to ask you when we pick up Solomon's call. Solomon, good morning.
Good morning. How are you
Good
guys?
morning.
Okay, my question, my opinion is this: if you look at how people vote in Kenya, we don't vote maybe based on tribe. We vote basically who is on the ballot. If, for example, Raila is on the ballot. Every people, because some tribes maybe or some certain communities they don't like Raila himself, they'll vote the other. Yeah. For example, in Kiambu County we had Kafogo and Waititu.
Right.
Because people did not like at that point, they did not like Kafogo. They had no other option than to vote for Waititu. So we always look at the next best alternative. Yeah. Because because if, for example, the ballot we have Peter Kenneth and, for example, Okuro Okot, for example, Kenya will be very confused.
Of course, at a local level, in terms of county leadership, the tribal factor doesn't weigh in as much, except some counties which are a melting point, like Nakuru, for instance. But in Kiambu, you do vote tribally, because if there was a Luo there, he would have been completely overlooked and the contest would have been a two-horse race. But of course, also sometimes, yes, we do vote against somebody, and that explains why you saw the lower voter turnout in the second election on the 26th of October, because people weren't coming out to vote against Raila. So that in part explains the lower voter turnout.
Yeah, and my opinion is, I'll let these shenanigans continue as far as, you know why?
Let's see how far it will play out, essentially.
Yeah, once it plays out, we'll be able to, us as citizens, us as people who elect, we'll be able to see, why are we doing this? Every now and then, these people come talk to us, they give us money in church, they do whatever they want, then they go back. They don't give us whatever, the basic needs that we want. And that's why you find, right now, people are saying, it's better we have the Kafogo he has than the Waititu who is a completely thief. You see? Then, of course, all these politicians are there for money. I won't lie to you. They're there for money. If I won't get that money, I'll vote you. I'll campaign against you. If, for example, I'll say, for example, like Kiambu County, where I come from, when Kafogo was the governor, he was very mean when it comes to money. When MCs did want to go for those seminars, I don't know, in Mombasa and Naivasha, they'll say the county has a chambers for that. And you see, the MCA will see there's no per diem to move around within the country. So
diligent,
exactly. So they say we should vote him because with this kind of government, you don't get any money. And you see, when the governor at some point said, you see, it's better I return money to the treasury instead of giving people to eat. So it boils down to, and that's what, at this point in time where I come from, is you find it's better it's better the devil you know than the angel you know. So, and then you see the people who we think can lead us, they are not leaders.
They turn up to not to be leaders.
Like for example, the late mastermind chairman. So you remember he had a secret funeral. You know what the guy did? At some point, sometimes back, he was doing some development in Meru, where he comes from. And the MP and the people who politics there, they started questioning, do you want to vie for 2013 election? What do you want? You see, and he was just trying to make roads, to help
Solomon,
the people.
point made. Point made, Solomon. Asante sana.
Thank you, Solomon.
Let me bring in John from Kisumu. Good morning, John.
Good morning, John.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Situation Room.
Yeah, it's my second time listening to Person, and it's great listening to you guys.
It's great. Asante sana. And Karibu.
Asante. And about the topic you're talking about, I think maybe things are different quite here on the ground, because quite here, the guys, we, the young people, whatever we are looking for, it's how to survive every day, day and day, day by day. And often we find ourselves in the divide because there's Kialaweka and there's Tanga, and most people not think Ruto has survived. Some people are like, let me move to Tanga so that I can maybe find a way out of life, something like that. And as you say, in the ballot, you don't know who you vote for at the ballot, but in terms of that, what I see the deputy president getting some roots here in Kisumu, getting some roots among the young people.
He's gaining traction in Kisumu, the deputy.
Yeah.
Interesting. He's had
me personally, if I can confess, maybe I have some liking for him. Yes, I do, because I've been a supporter of ODM for quite a long time, and I can say there's nothing that I've learned from it. And as I look at my grandmother and my daddies and everybody ahead of me, they've supported the position, they've been on the position for some time, but you can't say they've gained anything from it. So right now you're like, where can I get?
But this guy has been in government as the deputy, and you say you're suffering.
No, pardon?
He's been in government.
He's in a position to have done something to help you.
You know, here on the ground, it's quite different here on the ground because totally different. Because for me personally, I have been a supporter of Raila, a supporter of ODM as from around 2005 when I was still like a little boy, then up to now. And when we decided to deviate from Raila and do our own things, like we fought our own MP, we fought him, we rightfully fought him because the party didn't want him, but we wanted him, and we fought the party to pick him up. And the result we have seen whatever is done, and it's good. And deviating from the norm can help us. That's what we see. And on the ground, people are like, I'm in Tanga with it. But the intellectuals like me, we look at it differently because I see almost everybody trying to support the deputy is falling apart.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much for your contribution. It's the second time listening to Spice FM, and thank you very much for opting to choose to call in as well and contribute.
Yeah,
so let's wind up the show as well.
Interesting, just to remind us of some of the political narratives that are at loggerheads here. Now, these are the rhetoric, and yet another example or something exemplifying the fact that Ruto is actually being insubordinate, undermining his boss, i.e. His Excellency the President Uhuru. In some of his rhetoric, he talks about dynasties. Now, by dynasties, we mean heritage, or what we would say people whose parents have previously had the privilege to lead the country or have had what would be considered wealth. And he then pits himself against that, which is a very populist strategy, pits himself against that as the hustler. And people buy into this. He's got a great rags to riches story that he tells, whereby he was selling chickens, and then, of course, suddenly, he made money having worked so hard. The chickens, I don't know how many he sold to buy helicopters, but that's sort of the belief and the story that's been peddled on the streets. Now, that in and of itself, once people are weaving narratives that are contradictory to the status quo being what the president is and you're his deputy. So this is being done, or the insubordination or undermining, it's being done on a number of levels. In action, it's being done in terms of influence, in strategy. I've given you an example of his strategy. And that's why you're finding an affinity with people who are maybe struggling in terms of making ends meet, or the less fortunate, and they're seemingly falling into Ruto's support group, because Ruto has sold himself as the hustler, and people can resonate with this. And then, of course, he's missold this dynasty, and so he's pitting people as haves and have-nots as well. And what he's doing is trying to cast a wide net. Of course, the masses, we know the wealth distribution in this country, the masses will actually, or he'll appeal to the masses, and that's who he's trying to get.
So the conversation continues, of course. This is the situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. 30 seconds to the end of the show. Thank you very much for tuning in this morning. Spice Soul between now and 3 p.m. And then, of course, we'll have Monique on Spice Drive between 3 o'clock and 7 p.m. She has a lot to offer. She has some competitions that, you can call in and participate in. And then the adults in the room. Yesterday, they apparently had a very interesting guest. Who will they be having today? 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We'll be back.